put up a Reconyx camera, but I used a little SD card that came with a camera that was 15 megabytes. So when I set it up, I drove 13 hours. I set the camera up, drove 13 hours. And when I went back and checked the camera, I had 3 photos of my ass. And the card was full. So I set the camera up, walking out, it took 3 photos of my ass leaving, and the card was full. So when I went back to check it, hilarious. But
The HUNTR Podcast is brought to you by Deer Grow.
Man, it's almost food plot season, Jared, and Deer Grow is one of those products that has really changed the way that we plant food plots and the success we've seen from them.
No doubt. I've been, trying to plant food plots my entire whitetail hunting career, which is a little shorter than yours. But the minute that I started, or that I realized that I could get Deer Grow back into some of these remote plots where I couldn't get lime or fertilizer, especially in the 50-pound bag, format. So everything was changed. I could get into these spots moving forward with a backpack sprayer, and that's since escalated to these 40 or 60 gallon sprayers, and we're doing upwards of 5 to 10 acre food plots just with Deer Grow and having phenomenal success.
Yeah, and I mean, with the price of fertilizer, lime, diesel, everything this year, I mean, what better way to get in there and grow a successful food plot at about a third of the cost? Check out Deer Grow at deergrow.com. And we're back.
Hey, you.
HUNTR Podcast, episode 143.
Yeah, I got another 0.3 coming. And I got 1.25 inches last night.
That's good growth. Oh, rain.
Yeah. Which was perfect timing. I was a little worried about cutting those clover plots last week. That was a risky move, but
yeah, it came from the north.
They always do.
Yeah, came from the north.
Did you get some down at the Ohio farm?
Yeah, the Ohio farm got stuff. Kentucky did not. Home obviously did.
I know I'm being finicky, Nick. Can I just give me a little bit more of everybody?
Just give me a little more.
Somebody's been sitting in my podcast here.
It's your. You have to say your piece.
Oh, as always, remember to like, follow, subscribe, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen. Please give us a follow.
Mm-hmm.
Appreciate you guys.
I almost forgot about that.
By the time this comes out, hopefully we have 20K subs
on YouTube. That's crazy.
Thank you, everyone.
Appreciate the support from everyone.
Good benchmark.
This coming out. I think Labor Day was yesterday.
Yes.
If we did this correctly. Jared and I will have been hunting by now.
Got some last minute stuff in here. Pretty excited about it.
Well, we just got bows yesterday. New bows yesterday.
Yeah. We shot our new RX-7s yesterday.
Yeah.
Got them sighted in.
Which was the 23rd of August, just for reference.
Yeah, we're all locked in. I mean, dude, honestly, it feels exactly like the RX-5, except it's like driving a new truck.
Mm-hmm.
You know how it's like there was nothing wrong with the RX-5, but it's like
smooth,
something about a new bow.
Yeah, it felt good. And my thing, we were talking to Tim, our bow tech, about it at Ultimate Outdoors, but I've been shooting my recurve a lot.
Yeah.
Because I don't know, I may even just start the season with my recurve in Kentucky at least. Because I really got on it last year at the end of the season and have been shooting it through the summer to where, I mean, it almost felt weird shooting my compound yesterday at the bow shop just because I haven't used a release. I've been muscle memory and really, it's just a completely different feel.
I bet.
Even last night when I got home, I slung like 5 arrows with my recurve before I went inside.
Yeah, probably weird going back and forth. Huh?
If I did 10, I would have been divorced. So just 5. But yeah, it was weird just back and forth on that. But so yeah, now I've got to kind of mix that new bow in with the recurve stuff. But yeah, I mean, if this is coming out September 5th, that's what we said.
Yep.
Yeah, Kentucky's open.
I mean, dude, if you're on the fence about it
North
now,
Dakota's
by the end of this podcast, I bet you'll be pretty well convinced to just take out the recurve.
Yeah, we've got a pretty cool guest today.
Yeah.
So we've got Donnie Vincent on.
Yep.
And so Donnie's been gracious enough to come and talk with us. And obviously, first of all, if anybody's not watched Rivers Divide, I probably watch it, I don't know, 3 times a year, 4 times a year. Maybe?
Sure.
It's just a cool story.
Good one to circle back on.
Well, it's that September time frame. Right now when this is dropping, you're getting goosebumps, man. The weather's changing. In fact, it was like 49 or 50 degrees.
You better believe it. So I've got it downloaded. I'm going to be watching it on the plane as I'm flying out to North Dakota to hunt whitetails next week.
Yeah.
Cha-ching.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's one of those pieces and that stories. And to me, it really documents a lot of the highs and lows of a bow hunter that we all have experienced sometime probably in our bow hunting career. If you haven't yet, you just haven't hunted long enough. It'll come. You're going to have highs and lows of seasons for sure. And I think that, when you kind of look at that style of things, Donnie's films were probably some of the first really unique things that we saw in the industry. We kind of talked here pre-podcast a little bit about hunting TV and what the standard had been for several years basically. And then all of a sudden that comes out and it's completely different, than almost anything that we'd seen before. So, I think the cool part about it is, and Donnie would tell us, he made it because he just wanted to make it. Like he wanted to document that and probably for respect to that deer as well.
Sure.
Steve,
just passionate about the the process, the story.
Yeah.
It's obviously, and he's made quite a few films since then.
Yes.
So not to stick on that one, but I think just an embracing of the whole, the process of it's not just going out and killing a deer or harvesting an animal or whatever the objective might be. It's an embracing of the entire process. I know Donnie talks a lot about gear preparation and just, breaking down every little aspect of, not like, oh, it's like, I have to, be in my Sitka gear or my whatever it is. It's just, how do I, to the best of my ability, use, the very best equipment, the things that are going to work, well together so that I can have a clean, ethical harvest and also enjoy the hunt, and the experience, the adventure, like to its fullest potential.
Yeah.
And I think slowing down and stepping back, and also, we talked a little bit pre-podcast as well about removing yourself from like the machine that is the hunting industry. That's like, oh, I have to have my, my lineup of equipment or whatever it is, and just, doing what you feel is right, doing what you think is going to give you the best possible experience, the best possible outcome. And in Donnie's case, creating the best content, possible.
Well,
telling the best story.
We've talked about it. I mean, we've got caught up in that machine. It's almost impossible not to, just because of, you're surrounded by it. I mean, if you want to watch hunting stuff, whether it's on YouTube or whatever, it's everywhere. And so you get pulled into this machine, and
well, it's marketing. That's the point, is to influence your opinion of things. So we, we're obviously consumers of, when we see a commercial or whatever, some cool piece of content somebody put out, we're influenced by that.
You told me yesterday.
We allow ourselves to be. I want to be. It's cool. We want to take that in. And
you saw one. We made like a little clip, little commercial for HUNTR Specialties, and you're like, "Hey, did you guys make that HUNTR Specialties one?" And you're like, "Yeah," and you're like, "Yeah, it caught my eye."
Yeah.
And it's just,
I can just appreciate the quality of production.
Yeah, so it's weird how it's always around and surrounding. And I mean, even the three of us obviously talking today is like there's an influence that comes from that, and people watching this thing. And so it is a machine. It's just, and the machine's not bad in all cases. It's just find out like what you want to experience, and I think really appreciate what we've got coming up here over the next 3 months or 4 months, which is the fall season and all it's for, because we talk about all the time, you blink and it's gone.
Yeah.
And so, I think it'll be really cool and excited to have Donnie on and talk through some stuff.
For all intents and purposes, and I mean, for us as of recently, it's here. Like this is dropping. I'm coming back from North Dakota at this point.
I'll be coming back from Kentucky.
That was a last minute trip, and you've got Kentucky with the kids. And so like, dude, September is the month. That's when anticipation is at the all-time high. We're fortunate enough to we've got some early September stuff to kind of just, break the ice a little bit as we're getting into it. But, September is the month to like take a deep breath and just be ready for the next few months to come here. And it's, just ride it out.
Can't wait, man.
Let it happen.
Can't wait. Let's bring Donnie in. Appreciate you coming on, Donnie. Thanks for spending some time with us this morning.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I really appreciate the time. Really appreciate being asked to.
Well, man, it's, we kind of talked there in that intro, this thing's going to be dropping on September 5th. And, it feels like all summer, it's just kind of this grind and this anticipation, that finally starts to break through in that early September time frame.
It's anxiety-ridden preparation is like how it feels for me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Get everything in order. Get everything ready.
What's your first trip this year?
I mean, I have a couple of things that are on the docket, but my first big one, I have some commercial filming trips that I have to go on in early September. Not hunting stuff, but I am. I think I'm spending a few days on Lake of the Woods in early September fishing muskies.
Yeah.
With a good friend of mine and doing some fishing stuff, and But my first big one's at the end of September. Probably I'll go to Alaska, probably September 22nd, and I'm hunting caribou on the Alaska Peninsula, way down at the end of the peninsula. Something I've wanted to do basically my whole life, and there's really big bulls out there. It's really wild place, biggest bears in the world, and maybe the worst weather in the world. And so It's a really exhilarating place to backpack and hike and hunt. And so I'll be there probably for 2 weeks, the end of September, first week of October.
That's awesome, man. Donnie, just for, we talked about this kind of pre-podcast that this is kind of a discussion really to get to know you, because we all haven't had a chance to talk before. But I've read somewhere, is your background as a biologist?
It is. Yep. In wildlife.
It is. Interesting. Mine too, by the way. That's why I thought it was curious.
Right on.
Yeah. So where
I worked as a biologist for just a short time, a couple of years.
Yeah.
Early out of college, but then I quickly realized that wasn't the game that I wanted to be in, so I switched it up.
Gotcha, man. And where was most of that experience at? In Alaska?
I did a project in Nepal studying Bengal tigers. I did a project in Bangladesh studying Bengal tigers. I did a single year in northern Minnesota, helping a friend of mine finish his PhD studying rough grouse for the University of Minnesota. And then I did 4 years or 5 years working with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service in Alaska, working in remote camps studying salmon, doing a fecundity study.
Very cool, man. And is that at what point, I guess, did that, like, I don't know, call it that kind of raw calling to be in that wilderness and backcountry kind of hit you? Was it before then? Or was it when you were kind of doing some of that biologist work?
Oh, way before then. Yeah, since it's my earliest memory is that my dad had a really cool book collection of hunting and fishing, and actually, as odd as this might sound, he had a bunch of war books and books on Vietnam and the world wars, and for me, oddly enough, the war stuff and the wilderness stuff and the wilderness and kind of the survival of it all kind of tied together for me. And so I would look at all these books and read all these books, and I've wanted to be in the wilderness my entire life. I wanted to be around grizzly bears and Dall sheep, and going to Alaska by train or boat or whatever. It's all I've ever wanted to do, and that's kind of what I thought being a biologist was going to. I was naive about it, and I didn't realize the academics of it. I didn't realize the politics of it. That people are fighting over dollars for salmon, and people are, the native corporations want things wide open because they're feeding their families, and and they've lived that way 10,000 years. The sport fishermen want it open because everyone wants to catch a 30-inch rainbow. They don't want the rainbows being killed in gill nets, and the commercial fishermen want to make as much money as they can for their family and sell sockeyes to the supermarkets so people can buy it in Minnesota, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania. And so I quickly realized that. And then I also realized that as you advance in being a biologist, you advance into an office.
I was going to say, more administrative. Yeah, less field, more administrative.
Yeah, so I got out of there, and I didn't want to work for any colleges or be a professor. I just got out of there.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an interesting take. I think a lot of people, because that's when I was younger, that was kind of my thing. Is I love being outside. I love the outdoors. That's where I felt more at home, was outside and just being in adventures.
And you love
stuff.
Deer, right?
Mine was mainly deer. That was my passion. Is like, and my teachers told me I was stubborn because they're like, well, you need to see other, and I did. I worked with rough grouse and I did other things too, but I had a passion for deer, and that's what I wanted to do. And I went to Mississippi and worked for a while, and ultimately I kind of got the same thing. I wasn't cut out for a state or federal position. Like, that just wasn't who I was. There was, I'm not saying it's a bad. There was just too much control over the top of me, and that just wasn't how I wanted to live my life.
A pretty limited number of opportunities.
Very
too,
limited
right?
number.
I mean, there are probably some cool, you can go study tigers, out of the country, but if you're going to be
limited,
a whitetail specialized wildlife biologist in the States, there's a fairly limited.
Yeah, it's any position, and in the States, from a biologist side, you've got state state positions and federal positions. There's very few private stuff. I mean, they're increasing a little bit, but it's state and federal. And of those, there's very limited vacancies for, frankly, quite a few people coming through universities who want to be the next wildlife biologist.
Yeah, it's like a tough gig.
Yeah, and there's not a lot of money in it either.
Yeah.
So
you gotta love it.
I had some professors that I worked for, and they were brilliant men and women, but the person I'm speaking about right now is a guy. He's super educated, multiple PhDs, gets published multiple times a year in major journals. And I asked him one time, we were on a work trip and we were just driving home, and I just asked him plain, I was like, how much? And he comes from immense wealth, this gentleman did, so he was fine. His family had legacy, lifetime money, but I asked him, I said, how much money do you make? And he told me, and I was just like,
yeah,
not a chance.
Yeah, and that's the pinnacle.
This guy would work tirelessly, like,
yeah,
not a chance. So,
yeah.
And so I just want to do the cool stuff and do the dangerous stuff, and and go work on tigers, and I love doing the grouse study. It was really cool to spend all the time. I was spending all daylight hours in the woods, and same with working as a biologist for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. I lived in the wilderness for 5 months a year, and it was incredibly rewarding. And I didn't have other obligations. I didn't have other responsibilities at that time. So I could work, I could be there all summer, be all in, totally immersed. And then I would just go hunting when I would get done. I would just fly myself up to the Arctic Circle and go bow hunting for caribou for the next couple of weeks. Then I'd fly home, and I'd arrive home at, middle of October, and all my friends would be jazzed up and want to hear the stories. And I instantly wanted to leave again.
Yeah.
That's all I wanted to do, was come home, see the family. Okay, this is great. See you later, Midwest. And just kind of want to get out and go do some other things. And because I didn't really have good deer hunting at that time. I wasn't obsessed or interested. I was very interested in the whitetail deer, but I didn't really understand the ins and outs. I was very, very interested in hunting deer, hunting whitetail deer, and seeing deer on farms and seeing bucks and buck sign. But I had zero ambitions of, giant bucks and food plots and all that stuff. None of that stuff really spoke to me. I just wanted to hunt. Even with whitetail deer, I wanted to hunt them in a wild type setting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
How would you describe that for you now, Donnie? Like, where do your passions lie in terms of like going to places like Alaska or British Columbia, or like, wilderness type adventure hunts versus at home?
Yeah, so it's really hard for me, and I wish I had a good answer for you, but I'm plagued. People say, I'm not making fun of companies, but there are companies out there that use taglines like "I'm sick for it" and "I'm obsessed." This is all I can think about. But for me, it's just innately really who I am. Like, I can't get away from the wildlife. I don't want to get away from the wildlife. I see, I'll see a little buck, for instance, and let's say I'm with a buddy of mine, and I'll see a little buck, and I'll say, "Oh man, look at that buck right there." And they're like, "Yeah, it's a dink," but to me, it's a showstopper. Like, year and a half old 6-pointer in full velvet, bugs buzzing around his head, sun setting behind him, walking out in the grass, eating whatever he's doing, like showstopper to me. I see it as an oil painting. I see everything as a little oil painting. And so whether it be blue-winged teal on a farm pond or bluebill ducks on a big nasty lake at the end of October or November, or a giant whitetail buck in farmland of Illinois, or a doll sheep, that I'm stalking on a snowy cliff, it's all the same to me. It's where I am. It's what's going on. It's all an oil painting to me. I try to kind of see these things and recreate as if you were going to paint the perfect painting of a large whitetail buck walking out of a wood line and coming into a standing cornfield to feed, or a bean field, or walking through a CRP field to connect along the river, dog a doe, whatever. Like, I see everything as an image. And if I can paint a solid image of it, whether I'm duck hunting or deer hunting or hunting moose or grizzly bears, like, that's really what I want to do. And as that painting degrades, this is going to sound so silly to you guys, I've never even really spoke about this publicly, but if things aren't taking shape, if somebody I'm with has a negative opinion towards the animals, or is even speaking weirdly about the animals, or doing different techniques to kind of shortcut the experience, that oil painting starts to degrade, and I'm less and less invested in that moment,
Yeah.
and
Mm-hmm.
don't want to be around that person. And yeah, and I that's why I find myself more and more hunting by myself, and just kind of segregating and doing the things that I want to do. Does that make sense at all? So
Yeah, it does, man.
I love being in the mountains. I love flying in and seeing a 70-inch bull moose and the rain clouds coming through the mountains, and see a giant doll sheep and caribou. And I also, like, when I'm in a tree stand in Illinois, and I see, a 6.5 or 7.5-year-old fat pot belly, his neck is swollen, and I can see his breath coming out of his nostrils, and he's walking, he sees another buck, and he just folds his ears back, and instantly everything bristles up, and you'll see his little cockleburrs on his fur from where he bed last night. Every little image, and he just bristles up, and he starts to
Yeah.
That's
melts
it.
my damn mind. I can't even handle it.
Yeah, man. We talked about it a couple weeks ago on here, Donnie, and it's so. I'm glad you said that, because it's so hard to describe. Jared and I kind of talked about our goals when we go into a hunting season are almost to set just out of reach, and it's because those types of experiences that you're describing there, I don't want to miss this fall, and so I almost have an innate fear, and it sounds stupid, that if, let's say, opening weekend or whatever, I kill a big buck in Pennsylvania, I don't get to experience the rest of October and those rutting activities in November, because I'm tagged out, right?
Yeah.
I can go other places, but there's certain experiences that I want my goal so hard to reach that I'm going to just get drugged through the whole season and be able to fully embrace every ebb and flow and changing of the season and weather conditions. And it's hard for people to understand, because they're going to be like, well, the end goal is to tag a buck, like to kill a buck or shoot a big deer, whatever your goal is. And it's hard to describe that, why I almost don't want to reach the culmination from it.
And I'll give you for instance, and this is a real scenario that I might experience this year. It very well could go the opposite direction, but I've been scouting this location for the last 3 years in Illinois, where I'm hunting, and I finally have this. I have discovered this X in this large farm property, and I hunted it last year, and I've hunted it in the past, and I've had very good hunts there. But I'm learning more and more, because I'm spending more and more time in this area. I'm learning kind of how it ebb and flows throughout the year, and I know there's conditions change, and I know moon phases change and weather changes, and but there's a very real instance this year. It's a very good possibility that I could arrow a large mature buck the last week of October in this location. I've never hunted this location in October, and I don't hunt off of trail cameras. I use trail cameras. I use Lone Wolf, whatever the Lone Wolf little video cameras are.
Mm-hmm.
I don't ever hunt off of pictures or videos of this year. I collect all my cameras at the end of the year, and I watch them, and I look at them, and I make plans for this next year. And so this is why I'm kind of telling you, is I had several cameras set up in this area the last week of October last year, and I wasn't in there. In fact, I was filming a commercial for Shields in another location. But when I checked those cameras, this area was absolutely overrun with massive mature bucks. And so there's a decent indication that it might be going on in there again, and there's a good chance that I might kill a buck in there this late October. And if I do, I'm probably still going to go to this location or another location similar to this, and I'll sit dark to dark probably the first 20 days or first 25 days in November, even if I'm tagged out, just to watch the show.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go to another state and try to find another buck and to tag another buck so I can be one of those guys on a podcast where you guys say, whew, we saw your Instagram, Donnie. You killed 3 over 170 last year. You did it. You're like a killer. You got one in Pennsylvania. You got one in North Dakota. You got one in Illinois. And I love that stuff as well. I love traveling. I love doing that stuff. And I have several places that I'm going this year. But I know the show is going to go on in this location the first 25 days of November. I know it's going to be bananas because this is such a wild place. So rather than go searching for my next meat, if you will, or my next whitetail rack, I think I'm just going to settle in and watch the show there, even though I'll be tagged out.
And is that just a personal, like you watching and literally taking in the experience, or are you documenting it camera wise as well?
Yeah, we'll film the whole thing. So like anything that happens, we'll film everything, and just so we have it for information to share with people. And we really are attempting to ramp up getting back to filmmaking. And so I want to have all this stuff on camera, and then some of my clients that I work with, namely like Shields, they're adamant because of the type of ethics and morals that they have. They're adamant that the footage that we use in their commercials is as real as possible. And so it's also my job to kind of sit and watch and harvest some of this stuff. So
yeah.
But it's something that I love, and I rob Peter to pay Paul all the time. Like I'll be deer hunting, and a buddy of mine will call me and say, "Man, there are a lot of bluebills on Green Bay and Lake Michigan," and I will pull up stakes, drive overnight to Green Bay and Lake Michigan, and I'll go maybe shoot a limit of bluebills, which is 2. I'll go shoot a limit of bluebills with him. I'll literally drive through the night to go shoot 2 drake ducks, and then I'll drive back, or I'll stay and shoot 2 more drake ducks the next morning, and then I'll drive back or shoot golden eyes, whatever it is. And I've just kind of come to find that when I was younger, I would go to these places. I'm sure you guys have done this. I would go to these places when the time was wrong.
Oh yeah.
And just stick it out because I love doing it.
Yeah.
So, but as I've gotten older and you realize how fleeting time is, you start to go when the times are hot. So like I heard you guys were discussing earlier that, you're heading to North Dakota on opener early. And I love that because you get to see all those images, right? You get to see some velvet bucks, and you get to kind of experience the cricket chirps and as the sun is setting, and you get to kind of be there for that day when it goes from 90 as a daytime high. On Monday to Thursday, it's going to be a high of 72. And you get to kind of hear those geese honking on the river, and you get to see those bucks with their summer velvet coats, and they're nervously coming out their first few times. They've been with their buddies all summer, but now their buddies are starting to kind of poke them in the side when they're not paying attention. And you get to kind of live that stuff coming to life. And you really gotta hit when the iron is hot in those different instances.
For sure.
I think
Donnie, what part of the state did you film Rivers Divide in?
It was the extreme western side, so near the Theodore Roosevelt National Park. Like I'm just I don't want to say a few minutes, but a very short distance from Montana.
Yeah, is that west central part of the state?
Yeah, northwest central-ish kind of thing. Like
it's probably
Williston.
right where I'll be. Yeah, I'm flying into Williston next week.
Yep. So that location. Yep.
Yeah. In fact,
and to be honest with you, I tried to go back there this year, but the ranch is going through some family uncertainties, and so they've all decided, which drives me crazy when you hear like these families. They're not to get on a high horse, but the great grandparents create these legacy ranches and they hand them down, and then oftentimes the grandparents, it's not a dollar bill to them, it's a legacy chunk of land that they get to watch breathe and ebb and flow throughout their lives, and they hand it to their kids. But at some point it hits a generation and all they see is dollar signs, and so everyone starts. So there's no hunting on that ranch this year until things get settled out. So, which is really unfortunate because I had a filming project that I wanted to do, a really sincere, succinct filming project that I want to do for a company, and I wanted to do it there. But I was just told about the uncertainties.
Well, our buddy will get a kick out of this actually. So we're actually postponing your podcast. We're going to drop it. We're going to flip flop with when we're going to film this afternoon. Reason being, we got kind of I don't know how far to get into the story, but basically I had a good friend of ours that invited me out. He's like, you guys should come out. And I'm an opportunist, right? And so I was like looking at my calendar. I'm like, I'll go, So I don't think he expected us to take him up on it, basically. And so I found out after the fact he'd like had a couple beers at the golf course and got ahead of himself. You know, it wasn't really his place to invite. So he doubled back a little bit and was like, he's like, oh, well, you know what? We probably need to ask, you know, so-and-so that's, you know, they stay at his house and stuff. And fortunately, I had a bit of a relationship with the guy that hosts the camp. And so I reached out to him directly, and I went right to the source, and I said, hey, dude, just so you know, I would never invite myself to, like, I'm fully aware of the sacredness of deer camp, and like I totally understand if there's not room or whatever, it's fine. And so he and I worked it out. And I'm going, right? I bought the plane ticket and stuff, and I'm going. And my buddy that initially invited us doesn't know. He doesn't know. We're not going to tell him. Yeah. So, and I haven't talked to him since that whole kind of thing happened. This was like a week and a half ago. So the plan is I'll be in the back of the truck hiding when we pick him up from the airport because I get there before he does. And so I've never met this guy in person either. So it's Nick Scalma. It's one of our finance guys. He's been on the podcast before and stuff. So we'll pick him up the day after I get there, and I'll be able to jump out and surprise him. So that'll be pretty cool.
Would be funny. I mean, that will be funny, but it'd be funny if you then just bump into him at the airport and just say, hey man, I'm here, have all your stuff, and have the other guy that owns the house like, hey, did you invite someone?
That was the initial plan. So the problem is because I'm getting there after Nick, but if he got there first and I got there second, I was just going to roll up to the house, and the guy that owns the house is going to be like, dude, this guy's just showing up. Like, you know.
Oh God, that'd be so funny.
So
when I was younger, I went to a hunt in Texas. This sounds so stupid saying this right now. So stupid. But I went to a hunt in Texas that was bow hunting only. This whole ranch is owned by a traditional archer. He doesn't allow it pains him to even allow compound bow hunting, which is what I showed up with. But my buddy and mine and I, we drove down and we both bought 300 Win Mags with us. And just as a prop, and then when we got to the ranch, we were unpacking, and the guy saw that we had rifle cases, and he's like, "What are those?" And me and my buddy, we took the rifles out of the case. And we're like, "Oh, we got our 300 Win Mags.
We're ready to go."
And he said, "This is bow hunting only." And we go, "Yeah, we know." And we work the bolt. He was just looking at us like the strangest. And every time he tried to talk, we just work the bolt again. We're just like, yeah, we have our bows. Like it's we're winking at him. And after he was on to us, he was dying laughing. He's like, I can't believe you morons drove 24 hours with rifles in your truck just to pull this off.
Just to pull it off.
We thought it was awesome.
That's the fun with deer camp, though. I mean, that is the atmosphere and the lightheartedness that comes with deer camp that, has its own source of anticipation to get there and to enjoy the camaraderie aspect of things.
Yeah. Well, so Jeremy and I have been to North Dakota, in fact, twice. I think we've gone out, and we were fortunate enough to draw muley tags. Both Jeremy and I have shot muley out there. So we were hopeful that we would go back to North Dakota this year for muleys, and we didn't draw.
We drew last year, and we actually
couldn't go.
We declined our tags because of the drought. We're just like, it's not. It was so dry, and it just the experience. We had gone the year before, and it was really dry, and it was even worse last year. So we just kind of said,
"Is that why we didn't?"
Yeah, we forfeited our tags basically.
Okay, so we put in again for this year, and as luck would have it, we didn't draw. So Jeremy and I are sitting on a point, a preference point or bonus point or whatever they have out there. So I was kind of sitting here just like, not sulking, but I was like, I don't really have any plans until October 1 is when like Ohio opens and, most of our other states. Jeremy's got a farm in Kentucky, so that's September 1.
September 2nd, yeah.
So I'm kind of sitting here like twiddling my thumbs. And when, Nick was like, hey, you should come out to, and I guess what I was saying is when we mule deer hunted before, it was the far southwest corner of the state. Same deal. We were, stone throw to Montana.
Which is magical in that early September timeframe. The Badlands, early September, like you said, Donnie, like 90 degrees to 70 degrees. At night, it's 40 or 30.
It's literally one of my favorite hunts that we've ever been on.
Yeah.
It is so cool. I love it.
Yeah. And it's a weird feeling too, because like we typically set up like a base camp with like our travel. We pick up a travel trailer.
Drive too. So we drive from here. So it's like a 26-hour drive.
And pick up a travel trailer in Fargo or
as close as we can to the final destination.
So we always have a base camp we go back to, but it's funny because like you'll go out into the Badlands and like you just feel so remote. But camps whatever 10 minutes away that you can go back to every night.
It's a very accessible hunt, like for mule deer, some guy, and we someday would like to do like a high country deal, but it's like, I don't have a pack of llamas and I don't have a, the ability to do some of this stuff. So like the Dakotas offer, it's a pretty low barrier to entry mule deer hunt, and there's giant mule deer. It was pretty achievable.
It's as wild as it gets, man. I would go out there, and I set my teepee up on this plateau, and I could see literally the entire ranch. Not exactly from my teepee. I could see a lot of the ranch from my teepee, but I would walk. It'd take me 5 minutes. I would just walk out on this little lobe above a coulee, and I could sit in one spot with my spotting scope, and I would glass probably a solid 3/4 of the ranch. And I mean, I had all my deer identified, and I could sit there and watch them, and I could see thickets that there. It was it's incredible. I really hope the ranch gets things figured out, because I would like to start hunting it again. But it's tricky. It's tricky when you're dealing with different personalities and.
Are there muleys on that ranch too, Donnie, or is it mostly whitetail?
No, it's stupid, dude. It's literally okay. So on a given day, and I mean this, on the average day, I'll see herds of wild bison, like truly wild bison. I'll see, 140-inch to 180-inch mule deer, and several of them I'll see, huge whitetails. The last deer that I killed there, it's actually that I say this to people. I've never killed an easy deer. I just have never in my life, but I watched this deer since he was 3.5. I think I found him. And I watched him, and I killed him at 6.5. And it's the easiest deer I've ever killed. He ended up being a 162-inch 8-pointer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it only took me 2 days. It took me two days to shoot him.
My dad killed a 162.5-inch 8-point last year in Ohio. But funny that it's the same score, 8-point.
Giants.
Yeah, it's absolutely massive. And I knew him so well. It took me, and I could have killed him the first day. The only reason I didn't kill him the first day is because he was running with 165-inch 10, and the 165-inch 10 saw me drawing my bow. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, he would have been dead the first day. But anyway, just kind of seeing these animals, but I'll see muleys, whitetails, bison, bighorn sheep every single day. Like I'll have bighorn sheep walk through my camp every day.
Jeez.
I'll get videos of mountain lions every day. I've never seen one on the property, but I'll get videos of them walking past my teepee at night.
Yeah.
Rattlesnakes almost every day. And then occasionally I've seen antelope on the property. Occasionally I've seen elk. Probably 4 or 5 times a year I'll see moose on the property, tons of coyotes, but this is all
it's freaking magical.
I mean, it's insane, man. It's a really special place. And I used to hunt it with a good friend of mine, and it worked out perfect because he was addicted to muleys. And I've always been addicted to whitetails. And so when we hunted it together, he would always, because back in the day, when we would get our archery tags, it was for either or.
Oh, wow.
You could kill a muley or a whitetail.
That's right.
It wasn't until
it is still. Yeah, if you draw.
Let's just say 7 years ago.
Yep.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
It is still. So like if you put in for muleys, you get an either
any deer.
Either or, in any deer tag.
Right. But
the
back
whitetails
then,
are
it was
over
just
the
over the
counter.
counter.
Yeah.
Whitetails still are over the counter. Yeah.
Yeah, right. So, but we would have either or, and or I shouldn't say that. I misspoke. You had to put in for muleys.
That's right.
But we drew every year.
Yeah, there was no. Yeah.
They would have like 10,000 archery mule deer tags, and 2,000 guys were putting in. So we drew, like we couldn't, back in the day, because I hunted the ranch for 15 years straight. The first 12 years I hunted the ranch, you couldn't even fathom not getting a mule deer tag. Yeah. Everyone got a mule deer tag times, and then I think it was they had an EHD year or something like that.
They did.
And overnight they dropped from 10,000 tags to like 3,000 tags, and all of a sudden people stopped drawing.
Yeah.
Well, I guess that crossed my mind the other day. Like, didn't the Dakotas have a pretty bad EHD thing like just a year or two ago?
2 years ago.
Yeah, so he hasn't said anything.
They also did the year of the Rivers Divide. The year I killed Steve, they had we found a lot of dead bucks that year.
What year was that, Donnie?
2012.
Yeah.
I think I killed
2012 was the
Everybody got hit
year.
with
Yeah,
that.
Missouri, Iowa, Illinois, clear up into the. I mean,
Yeah.
it pummeled deer herds that year. It was the worst that I think I've ever seen.
Huh.
But yeah, it was 2 years ago.
The ranch owner was freaking.
Yeah, everybody
Yeah.
was, because I mean, it literally you could smell death.
Well,
when
he was
you walk out.
freaking. He was freaking that Steve was dead. He thought Steve was dead. Because when I wounded Steve, this is amazing that he did this. But when I wounded Steve, he stopped all hunting on the ranch. Like anyone else that had permission beside me, he called him. He's like, "You're not welcome here until Donnie kills this deer. Like no one's coming here until Donnie kills this deer."
Damn, that's wild, man. That's crazy.
Well, I wonder if, because I know we'd heard about that a year or two ago. I wonder if they haven't said anything about it this year. So I don't know. It's totally new experience, for me. We've seen a lot of whitetails, like where we hunted muleys in the southwest part of the state. There was, some
we
awesome,
saw some giant whitetails,
some awesome whitetails, but we just, we have so many whitetail opportunities back home, and it was just such an adventure to go not only to a new place, but like, dude, the muleys, I'll be honest, are a close second for me to whitetails.
I think it's the style.
Yeah. I've hunted elk, and I mean, it's not, I haven't hunted caribou or moose or anything like that, but I feel like I can tell. I can put myself in the shoes of, like, I can consume some of those hunts that are out there, and I'm like, dude, there's something about the deer for me. Like, whitetails will always have, like, the top place, but those muleys are, and what I love so much, you're talking about, glassing out in the Dakotas, and it's like, that's one of my favorite parts out there, as opposed to back home here in the East, is like, back here, there's so many questions. I'm like, man, so much speculation, whether it's with trail cameras or, glassing from the truck, whatever you can see in ag fields and lived experience from the stand. When you go out to the Dakotas or, any state, a lot of the Western states are this way. It's like, it almost takes the blanket off of everything. And if you have good binoculars, good glass, there's no questions. It's like, there they are. Every morning I see them coming back off the alfalfa field, and like, it's a pretty liberating experience to be able to like know and understand and see what they're actually doing uninhibited.
And you get to appreciate it, right? When you're in the woods of Pennsylvania, even when you're walking in, I really felt this way when I was a kid. When I would go in the woods when I was a kid, I would think to myself, I don't even know if there are deer in here, period.
Yeah.
Like, I just can't even picture deer being in the woodlot that I'm walking into right now. But when you're in the Dakotas, you can, literally see when I started the quest of hunting, that was one thing that was kind of cool with Steve, is I could see every other buck on the ranch, every single one I could glass from my camp. I never saw him once, not once. Not once was he still in the alfalfa field when the sun came up. Not once. The woodlot that he lived in was only probably 40 or 50 acres. And there were a couple of holes in it that, like sometimes I'd be glassing that hole, and it was so cool because you'd see yellow grass up to their chest. And then all of a sudden you just see this front shoulder walking down the trail, and then you'd see, a massive antlers. And I'm watching them go to bed. Like, I'm watching these big bucks go to bed. Not once was one of them Steve. Not ever.
Wow.
I saw that deer. I passed him when he was 4, which he would have been my biggest bow kill at that time. I passed him when he was 4, and a buddy of mine that was running the ranch at that time, he's like, kill that deer. He's huge. He's a giant. He would have been 145-inch 10-pointer at 4 years old, and he's like, kill that deer. He's huge. And I said, no, he looks, and I had him in front of me, but I was like, no, he looks really young. And then a bunch of archers had shot at him when he was 5 at less than 20 yards or 20 yards, because where he was living, like, you couldn't even shoot over 20 yards, and a bunch of guys had missed him because he blew up into, he was probably in the 60s as a 5-year-old. And then I found him when he was, but it was just weird that he could move through those areas. And I saw him 3 times, passed him at 4, wounded him at 5, killed him at 6, but I saw him 3 times only in all those years on the ranch. And I was sitting dark to dark. I sat dark to dark for him something like 46 days.
Wow. Oh, my word.
Wow.
Something like that.
Yeah.
That's mentally exhausting.
So were you running trail cameras? Like, how did you know he was there?
Yeah, running trail cameras, and it was funny. So one time, this is beside the point, but I'll tell you this story. One time I got a hare, like, I was thinking about this deer, And I heard rumors from the rancher. He's like, Donnie, he's always been really good to me, the guy that runs the ranch. And he'd call me and he's like, hey, like he liked old bow hunters. So it was never a huge threat for me because he'd always have these guys out there that were like
Yeah.
60, 70 years old. And they'd come in and he would tell me these great stories. These guys would come in and he'd be like, hey, your quiver's empty. And they'd be like, oh, there was deer everywhere tonight. And, and he'd say, like, did you hit one? And be like, not even close. Like, we got to go find my arrows now. And so these two guys with flashlights would go fumble around and go find all their arrows sticking in the ground, and they'd get a kick out of it. And so, but this guy called me and he's like, hey, these guys are coming back pretty befuddled about what they're seeing. And I was like, oh, no kidding. So I put a camera up over there. But the second year, after I wounded Steve, when I was trying to locate him again to see if he lived, it was funny because I drove from my house in Wisconsin to the ranch. It takes me 13 hours, something like that. But I hopped in the car at like 2 a.m., drove all day, got there, and I put up a trail camera. I put up a Reconyx camera, but I used a little SD card that came with a camera that was 15 megabytes. And so when I set it up, I drove 13 hours. I set the camera up, drove 13 hours. And when I went back and checked the camera, I had 3 photos of my ass. And the card was full. So I set the camera up, walking out. It took 3 photos of my ass leaving, and the card was full. So when I went back to check it, hilarious. But the year that I saw Steve, I wasn't finding any deer on this ranch, which is super, super rare. Like usually it was really easy for me to find. I mean, I've probably killed 10 bucks on that ranch, and I'd say they all average 6.5, 7.5, 8.5 years old. And so it was always easy for me to find an untouched buck and to kind of hunt it. And but I also, for years, I'd only hunt that ranch in December and January.
Mm-hmm.
So I would let all these archers would come out there. All these archers would hunt it early during the rut, yada yada, and then I would go out there December and January. I'd use my glasses to locate a big buck in a feeding pattern, and then I'd kill him. Right? It's not. I don't want to say it was easy because oftentimes I was hunting, it'd be 20, 30 below zero, but it was awesome, and I just really liked it. It was kind of my end of the season. North Dakota has always been really good for people to start there.
Yeah.
Or to end there, right? I mean, the rut's amazing too, but you get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But yeah, that year when I saw Steve, on the first picture I got of him, and it's in the film, but the first picture I got of him, I was just like, oh my word. Like I thought he was 180 because their bodies are too small to really conceptualize.
Yeah.
He ended up being 165 inches. And I was going to have both of his sheds. I have his shed right there from when I wounded him. Do you guys want to see it?
Yeah, man.
Of course.
But I had this guy, there was a farmer, a rancher on this ranch, ranch hand, and he found both of Steve's sheds laying perfectly next to each other in a hayfield in the spring. And he's like, hey, I think that's that big deer that Donnie's hunting. But he just kept haying, and then he ran one of them over. And destroyed it, and he's like, "Oh crap!"
I hope he got a flat tire for that.
Gee.
He goes, "I better pick the other one up." So I could have had both sides, but he ran one of them over.
Who leaves the shed just laying there?
I hope he got a flat tire for that.
Holy cow!
So that's
my.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's from the year that and actually he ran this one over too, but the blade just nicked it right there.
Jeez.
But destroyed the other one.
That's from the year that you wounded him?
This is from the year that I wounded him. And then there's another deer that you guys probably don't know about, because there's actually a Rivers Divide 2, because I did the exact same story as this.
What?
Again.
No, I hadn't seen that one.
Where's that at?
Well, it's not out. I haven't even edited it yet.
I was like, where's that at?
No. So
of course we haven't seen it.
So this deer, which we named Bob because he only has half a tail. A mountain lion bit his tail off.
Oh, wow.
Well, Bob
so I shot this deer in, I don't know the years anymore, but I shot it in the wintertime. It was 30 below zero. I had a 30-yard shot on him. He was 6.5 years old. And I came to full draw, and and I felt so good too because I at that time I was shooting a hinge because had horrible target panic, or I shouldn't say horrible, but I had very bad target panic.
Mhm.
So I came to full draw, and he came walking out, and I just put my pin right on his chest. I felt super calm, and I just walked into it. The shot. Like if you watch the video, if I showed you the video right now, you'd be like, "Oh, you smoked him! You smoked him!" Like it looks like I just heart punch him. It's an absolute X, but it just hits him through the brisket.
Wow.
And I thought I smoked him too. Like the arrow hit somebody, runs off, and I was like, "Oh, he's dead." And then it was funny because maybe 10 minutes later, he comes running by dogging a doe. So like,
Yeah.
okay, he's probably fine.
There's your high of high to low of low in 10 minutes.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And then it took me 3 years to kill that deer. So I killed him at 9.5.
Whoa.
Wow.
And so you
And he
have that
disappeared.
documented, Donnie?
It's totally fully documented.
The public needs
Yep.
Rivers Divide too.
I probably have a legitimate feature length called an hour I probably have 4 or 5 hour-long films in the can that I just need to produce.
Mm-hmm.
Something like that. Like I could stop filming this year and come out with 4. I could come out with a film every year for the next 5 years, easy, maybe even 6 years, and for a body of work. But I've just been so busy with commercial work for Shields and then like True Velocity. You see my T-shirts.
Yeah.
Probably our biggest client. We do all the military stuff for those guys and production stuff. And so like I have several shoots with these guys this year, which I get to go, which is super rewarding because I get to go spend time with Navy SEALs and Delta Force guys and Green Berets, and
That's awesome.
and film all this stuff. But it keeps us too busy, if you will, right?
Mhm.
I just have a small crew. But anyway, so that deer Bob, he's awesome. And listen to this. This is so cool. I should probably put a photo together of this. So you guys have seen the Rivers Divide multiple times, right? Is that what you're
Mhm.
saying?
Yeah.
Yes.
So you know that that dead branch that sticks out? He comes out and he kind of like pushes that other buck off,
Uh-huh.
and then
Mhm.
he turns and he starts walking in towards that dead branch. And
Yep.
that's when I shoot him.
Yep.
When I killed Bob, he and Steve would be nose to nose.
Oh wow.
Wow.
But when I wounded Steve, it was in that exact same location. So Steve was facing the opposite direction and he was walking north when I wounded him. And then he was walking kind of southeast when I killed him. Bob, I was on the other side of the ranch. I was 2 miles, 3 miles away when I wounded him. And he would occasionally go through Steve's area, but not very often. And just lo and behold, it was very, very late. I was camping. I camped for, it was either 17 or 21 days we camped. And it was daytime highs were -10.
Holy
Nighttime
cow,
lows were
man.
-30. And we were camping in a floorless teepee in the forest just beyond him because I just wanted to suffer through this one. And so we would have to cross the river, have to cross this ice every day. And we'd sit out literally dark to dark in these brutal temperatures. And I wouldn't even allow, like William Altman filmed the whole thing.
I was
Like,
gonna
wouldn't
say.
even allow him to wear a lot of clothes.
He's like, Donnie, I'm cold.
Not wearing a lot of clothes. Like we'll wear a lot of wools.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll be warm enough, but like no synthetics at all. We're all doing wool, and he was fine with that. He's a really hardy guy. And then that deer came in, and I was standing up and peeing. And William and I know each other very, very well. We filmed.
You spent 21 days in a teepee
probably
with each other. I mean, you pretty much know everything
Yeah.
about each other.
So we were in a hay bale blind, and I was standing up and going
Oh yeah.
pee.
Bending way back.
And then, and William just went like this to my butt. And when he poked me, I just stopped peeing and I turned around. And we kind of have this thing.
Slowly comes
we've
to a
had over the
dribble.
years, whether it be grizzly bears or caribou or whatever, is like if he pokes me or pinches me, like if I'm looking the other direction or whatever, the more urgent the situation, the harsher the pinch or poke.
Yeah.
So like he poked me, I stopped peeing.
You're like left
and then
cheek. We're
really
good.
started-
Right cheek. We better
really
stop what we're
started
doing.
pushing against my butt cheek. Yeah.
Yeah.
And he started pushing. I was like, okay, this is serious. And I turned around and he's like, I don't know what it is. He's like, but I can hear a deer coming through the woods. And he could hear the branches ticking off of its tines, and it sounded, it just had a different tick to it, right? It sounded heavy. And I sat back down, I grabbed my bow, and I basically, as he was walking in, I just looked over and I was like, hey, it's Bob. And he looked at me like, because Bob disappeared. The year before I killed Bob, we didn't get a single trail camera photo of him. We didn't glass him once, ever.
Wow.
Like we thought a mountain lion ate him or somebody killed him. Like he was
that
just gone.
age.
So we had moved on to hunt. Yeah, because at that time he was 8.5.
Yep.
And then ended up killing him at 9.5. Yep.
That's crazy. And
so
then,
that's all documented.
Those conditions too. I mean, that's the hard thing for people to really imagine with some of those mature bucks like that is the conditions that they go through season after season. These deer are so freaking tough. It is just, it's almost unfathomable how tough these animals are out there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, they really are. And so it's really rewarding, and we have to edit that stuff. Like, I'm going to look 25 years old in these films when I finally what I think we're going to do, I shouldn't even tell this to you guys because I don't want to. No, I'm not going to say it, but we have an idea of how we're going to put these films together that I think is going to be pretty sensational.
Cool,
Awesome.
man.
Well,
I'm mean, I'm sure everybody is really looking at it. The HUNTR Podcast is brought to you by Stealth Cam.
Dude, where would we be without our cell cams?
I would definitely be divorced at this point.
Yeah, I hear that.
I mean, the fact is I spent more time checking cameras than I actually did hunting prior to cell cameras. Now, at least, my wife can enjoy me being in the comfort of my own home, buried in my phone, checking those pictures.
Yeah, 100%. And dude, when it comes to trail cameras and definitely cell cameras, reliability is, I think, the number one thing that we're looking for. Stealth Cam just has a long reputation of reliable cameras, and ultimately that is the most important thing to us. They have to work.
In terms of reliability, there's not a better camera on the market than Stealth Cam, whether you're talking about the Fusion X, the Reactor, or the DS4K Transmit. And most of them are under $200.
Stealthcam.com. Check them out. Donnie, I'm curious, how you doing with that target panic now?
Oh, money. Like I cured myself before it's really funny because I went to ATA one year and Joel Turner, you guys know who Joel is, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about this, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Joel was speaking on target panic and I was like, oh my God, this is going to sound so egotistical, but I don't mean it to be. I was rushing to his seminar because I was reading everything I could on target panic. If I saw a book on target panic, I would buy it. If I could find a podcast on target panic, I would listen to it.
Can you kind of describe it? Can you kind of describe it? How did that kind of start for you? And what, like, was it having to do with your release or your equipment? Because I went through probably the exact same thing. And I'm curious to hear how you went through this.
Okay, so I used to be a really good shooter, but I didn't know what I was doing. But I was just really good at, I would come to full draw, put my pin on the bullseye, and then I would just literally keep my pin on the bullseye and just tink, and I just slap the trigger, and the arrow would go in the bullseye. Mm-hmm. And I just would do that and do that and do that. And one year I was shooting an archery tournament with a friend of mine. It was really funny because he's such a funny guy. But he came to full draw and he goes, hey. And I said, yeah. And he goes, if your pin is below the bullseye, what do you do? I go, I raise it up. And he goes,
how?
But I can't. This guy's a fireman. He's super strong. Yeah. He goes, I can't. And I go, why? He goes, it's super heavy. And I go, what do you mean it's super heavy? And so I didn't understand what he meant. He couldn't put
can't bring it up.
His pin. So basically, I've learned this through Joel, but basically your body knows that there's going to be an explosion. The release, whether it be a pistol, a rifle, or a bow, it knows that there's going to be an explosion, and it knows that when your pin is around that bullseye, that's when the explosion is going to come. So basically, your mind won't let you put your pin on that bullseye. You can drive it by. You can bring your pin up, and then that's what I got to doing. And one time, you guys, I was getting ready for a dull sheep trip, and I put a piece of 1-inch tape on my target, and I was shooting it at like 80, 90 yards. It's incredible what the human mind can do. I would literally bring my pin up from the bottom and I'd shoot. I'd time it. And I was putting like 80% of my arrows were going in that tape.
Wow.
But when I would sight in, like nothing ever, like when I was trying to just get dialed, like I was all over the place. I'd switch arrows, I'd switch releases, all this stuff. And so I read all this stuff. And in reading this stuff, I even realized Fred Bear of Bear Archery had target panic so bad that he almost closed the doors of Bear Archery.
Oh, wow.
He had it with his target and with his recurve. And so he had target panic so bad with his recurve that he almost closed the doors. He even started shooting left-handed for a while to try to see if that was, to see if the problem was shooting right. So all these guys have went through this. So then I read an article. I saw a magazine ad for the Carter Honey release. Have you guys ever seen that?
Mm-hmm.
It's a hinge with a safety.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I bought one, and it was and I liked it. I did. But then I found the Honey 2, which is a little circle with just a little smooth.
Did you happen to talk to those guys? Like, did you talk to Forrest Carter as you were getting into that?
I didn't, but I read an article from Forrest Carter about how he cured his target panic, and he was both right and wrong.
Okay.
So he had, because like they would talk about back tension. And so sometimes I was coming to full draw and I was flexing my back, and I'm a decently strong guy, and I'm just sitting there going, I'm waiting to pull my bow in half.
Yeah.
Right. That's how hard that's how much I'm settled in. And then I saw this seminar or something one time from Levi.
Yep.
And Levi's like, somebody asked
Morgan?
Somebody in the audience, Morgan.
Yeah.
And
Levi
like,
lives right up the
Levi.
street.
He's our
here.
neighbor.
Yeah.
Oh, he does. Okay. So one time somebody was like, and just so you know, if you guys talk to Levi, like I'm pretty sure I have this in my head, but if I'm misremembering, just
Sure.
I'm not quoting this, but basically somebody raised their hand and was like, Levi, tell me about, like, are you using back tension? And I saw it in his face. He kind of got this shit-eating grin on his face. And he was like, back tension's kind of bullshit. Like, it's really actually fake.
Yeah.
And I heard people in the audience, and people are like, what do you mean? He's like, it's like the whole archery industry saying back tension, it's a bunch of bullshit. Like, you can't pull into your scapulas and miraculously, once you bury your scapulas against your spine, miraculously you enter the kingdom of the archers, Shangri-La, and it goes, whoa, and you hit the bullseye. He's like, no, there has to be movement.
Yes.
And as soon as he said that, I was like, you, Donnie, are a moron. I can't believe how dumb you are. And so as soon as he said that sentence, I ran downstairs, grabbed my bow, grabbed my arrows, and I had a block 4x4 target, the big one that you see in archery ranges, had it in my basement, and I had a golf tee in it, and I came to full draw with that Honey 2, and I just buried my pin on that golf tee, and I'd still get into good form, right? I'd still bury my scapulas, but once I got totally locked out using my muscles, I would, as slow as I could, I would rotate that release and it'd go off. And my heart would be beating out of my chest. I'm like, I considered shutting Sick Manta down. I considered stopping filming. I considered basically disbanding my team and saying, guys, we got to go do other things, because whatever it is, I don't have it, never had it, probably never will have it. I could shoot fine when I didn't know what was going on. Yep. But as soon as my body kind of started to anticipate that explosion, I had to move on. Well, then I came to full draw, burying my pin on that tee, and I just slowly rotate. And it got to where not only did the explosion not bother me, but it got to where I craved it. To where, like, I'd come to full draw and I'm like, I cannot wait for this thing to go off. And I would just sit there and I'd bury that pin in. And I started just getting, like, when I would shoot normally, first of all, I'd panic if anyone watched me shoot. Sure. Right?
Yeah.
If guys started to gather, like if I went to a hunting camp, which would always happen, I started to shoot, guys would gather around me like, well, it's Donnie Vincent. I'd be like, I'm hoping a sniper has his crosshairs on my forehead right now. Any second, he's just going to, and I'm going to get to go away.
Yeah.
But I would get so nervous. And every time I shot, I'd be like, oh, my bow. Oh, it was my grip. Oh, my bow jumped. Oh, my release farted. Oh, a crow flew by. And I thought I saw an airplane. I mean, literally, And then I got to where I just absolutely love this thing. And my groups went from when I used to shoot, I'd be like, well, that's about a deer's lungs. Now that's, it's okay.
Yeah.
To where literally I could go up and pull 4 or 5 arrows at a time because all the shafts were touching.
Yeah.
Right. And like, it's just like I stopped and I realized, and I said, Joel loves that I say this sentence, but I realized I thought to myself, oh my word, where the arrow goes is actually none of my business. If I do my job right here,
Yep.
who cares if I get a bullseye? Who cares if I double lung the deer? Who cares if I shoot the aspirin out of the air? That's none of my business. The arrow's already left me. I have no control, zero, over that arrow once it leaves my bow. None. So I might as well just focus on this. And then if you guys are watching me, if I was at your house right now and we're doing this live and you said, we're going to go outside right now, you haven't shot a compound bow in 6 months, you're going to take my Hoyt RX7 or whatever it is that you guys are shooting right now. You're going to take my bow and we're going to see how good Donnie Vincent can shoot at 60 yards. I'd say go ahead and go to your target and hang a vertical rope that's a 1/2 inch or less wide. Give me your bow that I've never shot before. Give me a hinge or Joel's new Onyx thumb button release, which I hate thumb buttons, but Joel has a really good one now. Okay. Give me that release. I'll freaking hit that rope in 3 shots, or maybe I might even hit it the first shot, because I have realized to leave my aim alone because it doesn't matter. And so like when I'm shooting at something now, like I was shooting, I did an event last weekend I'm not bragging, you guys. This is just stuff that I like to do. I did an event last week in Wyoming for the Polaris group. You guys obviously have heard of Polaris. So I was doing a thing with Polaris, and we did a bunch of stuff with their machines and all this different really cool things that you guys will see coming up. But just because Polaris is such an awesome company, they wanted us we went out and shot bows, and we went out and fly fished and shot rifles and all this stuff. And they have this ranch that we were on has an awesome rifle range. And I wasn't showing off, but I just wanted to see if I could hit the 1,000-yard target offhand with a heavy kind of bench gun. And so, because I'm so comfortable with the wobble in my crosshairs, that I'm so confident in my trigger pull process back here now, whether it be a pistol, a rifle, or my bow, and I didn't hit it. I shot probably 5 or 6 times at it. I never hit it, but I was missing it by like 4 or 5 inches, 6 inches, 12 inches, 18 inches, something like that. So really dang close. But that's the thing, is I got so comfortable with that wobble, right? That having my pin, like let's say I'm trying to shoot myself in the face, when you're a new archer or you're a macho archer, or you think that snipers are actually holding their gun still, you hate that wobble. But really, if I'm trying to shoot myself in the nose and my fingers are wobbling a little bit, I had a cup of coffee. But if I just let this do it, the next movement is always back to the center.
Yeah.
It's never away from the target. I'm always moving close to the target. And my conscious mind is way slower than my subconscious mind. So if I just take my conscious mind and I walk that release back as slow as I can, while embracing that wobble and longing for that explosion, I'm gonna hit the bullseye every time.
Yeah.
Or I'm gonna do my best version of the bullseye. It might hit 3 inches to the right, might hit 3 inches to the left, might hit high, low, whatever. Who cares? But it's gonna it's gonna do its job. And the more you practice, right? That's where. And then like you get guys like Levi Morgan, you get people like Bodie Turner that are mental midgets. Right? They're mental giants, if you will. When I say midgets, I mean that they can dissect things. Like, I don't know Levi at all, but I'll guarantee you he's doing the tiniest little dissections. Like everyone else is going, oh yeah, that guy over there shooting his bow. And Levi's going, no, I am paying attention. I know the sound of his arrow. I can see the distance of his foot to the target. Like he's doing other things in his head to split finite little details that's what makes him the best, is he's doing things that the rest of us can't or aren't. Same with Bodie. Like I've shot with Bodie so many times, and like I've shot last time I was at his house, we were shooting, I think 125 yards, and he doesn't even have a 125 yard pin, but he was stacking arrows like this at 125 yards because he came to full draw, and me, him, and Joel were doing these long bombs, and he like put his pin on there and he shot, and the bullseye was, let's say the bullseye was here. Bodie was shooting just above the bullseye, and he was shooting this super tight group. And Joel was like, how come you're not hitting the bullseye? And he's like, Dad, I don't even have a 120-yard pin. I'm just holding my pin on the exact same spot every time. So I'm not going to chase this bullseye. I'm just doing the same thing. And Joel's like, okay, cool. Yeah. But I mean, his group was like the size of a tennis ball at 125 yards. Yeah. And so that's how I kind of got through it, is that I worked through, I heard Levi say that back tension was bullshit. Then I realized that there was movement. Then I realized that aiming is not something that any human can really do. Mm-hmm. Like, if you're a world-class Delta Force sniper, your crosshair wobble is probably a fraction of what mine is. Let's say on a scale of 1 to 10, my wobble's a 9, and you as a Delta Force operator, your wobble's a 2, because you're just better at this job. That's what makes you excel in that realm. Like, all three of us can drive cars. None of us drive race cars, right? We all, you know, if you put us behind the wheel of a race car, all three of us could drive race cars today. And we could probably have a relatively entertaining race if the four of us raced. Yeah. But if you put us with race car drivers, it'd be like, what's that guy's deal? Why is he going so fast?
Yeah, exactly.
But he sees the racetrack in different manners. They can split hairs. They can do finding things and what makes them excel. And so that's really how I started to. And then that explosion that I started to embrace when I shot in my basement, that started to be an explosion at the animal, to where I started really loving that. Instead of rushing through that process of getting that arrow off right away to get it in, like, I'd come to full draw and shoot right away to like just get an arrow in the deer, like just kill the deer. I want this over. Yeah. Like, it's gotten to the point sometimes. I shot this big elk a few years ago. It's 18 yards. He's staring at me, bugling at me at 18 yards, licking his nostrils, drool is running out of his mouth. He's literally bugling at me at 18 yards. And then he turned to get my wind. My wind was dropping downhill, and he turned because he's like, I don't know what this thing is. He turned, started to get my wind, and I had my honey too. And I was full draw, and I put it on his shoulder, and I clicked my release off, and I was just sitting there. And my friend who I was hunting with, I could tell he was like, is he going to shoot? Yeah. And I kind of was so in the zone of just enjoying that sight picture. I was like, oh yeah, I still have to kill this bull. And so I just ever so slightly, I just, air bow went off, and bull was dead in 50 yards or whatever.
Crazy.
So it's been this. And then now I've obviously started this absolutely moronic journey with a longbow. And so, you know, I'm saying, whatever.
Are you still using the longbow that Flip gave you?
Yeah, I shoot it all the time.
Yeah.
But I'm not hunting with it because the poundage on it isn't what it used to be.
Got it.
And so I just feel like I need to be slinging a little bit more oomph for deer. So
What's the poundage on the new one you're using?
51 pounds.
Yep.
And I'm probably going to order a 60 pounder here next.
Wow. Yeah, that recurve I'm shooting is 52, and that, I mean, it feels heavy. I mean, you get used to it when you shoot enough reps, but it's just when you've shot compound for years, it just feels so different.
Yeah. Here, if I can, real quick,
I gotta buy a new compound. I gotta get back. I just want to start shooting a compound again, and I don't. I have one. I have a PSC right there, but I gotta go shopping.
If I can, before we move on to the trad stuff here real quick, I just conceptualizing everything you're saying about the shot process. You know, we're talking about a compound bow and target panic, and it's funny. I went through a very similar, you know, whether you were having this exactly or your buddy that you mentioned, like, could not get that thing up to the target, right? Just always low, always low. And it was fear.
So stupid.
And dumb. I couldn't understand it. I was like, why can't I do this? And when I would force myself to do it, it was exactly that. It was forced. It was rushed. And it was happening in real life, like real hunting situations. I was shooting way under deer, like, and it was just like, I was like, what is happening here? I was like, I think of myself as like, I'm a, fairly established. I've killed a lot of, this was maybe what, 3-4 years ago?
3 years ago.
And I was just like, I couldn't understand what was happening. I actually ended up talking to Forrest Carter at it was one of the ATA shows. I just was like, I was just walking around like, with my head in my hands, basically like ashamed of. I couldn't even shoot my bow in front of people or at a target. I couldn't kill anything. Yeah. And so I was just, I don't know if somebody had mentioned to me like, well, you should try a back tension release or some type of a different release to check that out. And I just happened to, Forrest was at the booth there, and I just was like, laid my soul out for him. I was like, dude, here's what's happening. Like, here's my issue. Like, do you know anything about this? He's like, yeah, I wrote a book on like how to, solve target panic or whatever. And so he kind of gave me I don't know if I bought the book or he ended up emailing me something after the fact, but he's like, here is my process for this. He's like, I basically, so you're describing it as like an explosion. You're like, when I shoot, it's an explosion that the mind is afraid of that. That probably is true, and on varying degrees for different people. But for me, it was more fear of the negative consequence of what would happen when I pull the trigger. Not like, the explosion part of it, but I missed by a lot. And I was avoiding that negative thing that would happen. And so it was that cycle or repetition that was causing me to have target panic. It was really bad.
It's the same thing, right? Like I say explosion, you say you didn't want to miss your target, but really it's not that you were afraid of the explosion. It's that you had a pre-ignition movement because you weren't comfortable with your aim. That's the biggest thing that you have to do. And Joel describes it best is that you have to find your aim, find it to keep it, watch it to keep it, but you have to leave it. You have to abandon your aim and move on because you can't aim and have a good release. So you have to get your aim good enough. And then you're like, okay, that aim is good enough. That dot is floating around that deer's chest, as small a wibble as you possibly can. And then you start walking through your release. And if you're fine with that little wobble on the deer's chest, your mind is moving that wobble back to the center every single time. Yeah. And it was really cool. We did this process with Joel. We were shooting pistols and we had a red dot on a pistol. And there's probably 5 of us in the kitchen. We were in Alaska. And Joel handed each of us a pistol. And we had this thing on the wall to aim at with this red dot. And it was really cool to see. Some guys had, like Joel had a really tiny wobble. Yeah. And then my wobble was bigger than Joel's, but sharp, really sharp edged. And then like a couple of the guys kind of had like almost like the lobes of a flower. Like their movements were just kind of this weird little like circular motions. And so it was just weird to see. We each had, this different way of aiming, but it was very clear to me, like Joel doesn't drink coffee. And at this point in the morning, I had 2 cups of coffee. So Joel, and I'm not making excuses, it's just caffeine is what it is. But Joel's wobble was like 1/8 of an inch, and my wobble was like 1/2 inch or 1/4 of an inch or whatever. And so like, it's just, but yeah, have you ever taken Joel's course or?
Not the course. I'm trying to remember if, I'm not as familiar like with is it the shot IQ stuff? I can remember it was
shot IQ.
Consequently, it was also at an ATA thing. Like I remember running into that booth and it was like,
we saw it.
Is that the software? Did Joel come up with that? Is that where it would monitor exactly where you're aiming at and then your lead up to the shot and stuff? That was Joel?
Well, I mean, it's not necessarily that, but he just goes through the mental training. Like you guys, honestly, you should contact him. And I mean, even if I train with them probably 4 or 5 times a year, but it would be advantageous for you guys to, let's just say, buy it as a group. Yeah. And then every year, let's just say August, you guys are like, hey, or whenever you want to do it, I'm going to watch this again. Let's say it's 2 hours long. I'm going to pour myself into his process because it makes all the difference in the world. He's a friend of mine. Obviously, he's an archery coach, but I fly to his house probably 4 times a year, and I'll spend a long weekend with him and his family, and we just literally, him and Bodie, dude, like if you want to know what the best does, you want to know what the best shooters do, I'm sure Levi's like this. When I'm at Joel's house, we get up at probably 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning. We go out in his field. we start shooting our bows at 6:30 in the morning. We shoot until probably 11ish before you start to get the shakes like I haven't consumed food.
Wow.
Then we'll go in and eat some sort of breakfast. We go right back outside and we shoot our bows until, we eat dinner. After dinner, we shoot our bows until we can't see our pins anymore. We can't see our arrows anymore. And they do that.
Wow.
Every day of their lives.
Holy
That's
cow.
all him and Bodie. Bodie probably shoots, you guys aren't like 1,000 arrows a day.
Wow.
I don't even want to it is, and the process is the same every time. And like they are absolutely embedded into archery. They shoot their bows almost every waking daylight hour.
That's crazy.
That's awesome. Well, here, and I'll wrap up what I did pretty quickly. So this was a prescription from Forrest. He's basically like, here's what you should do, and I did it to a T. And I kind of am like you. It's like a success story, like victory on the other side of it. It's funny to look back at it now, where it's like, dude, I could shoot anything. I feel so comfortable with my
anything
with my process now. So what I did, and it was important to differentiate that explosion versus that negative connotation, which it was more for me, was I had to remove that element from shooting completely. I had to get rid of any negative consequence that would come from me missing my mark. And so the way that I did that was I got rid of the bow completely. There was no aiming at anything. I reduced it to a trainer. You ever seen those? It's like, looks like a tube and it's got a string that comes out of it. It's just
I have one.
Yeah. It's just an archery trainer. And at the same time, I took some advice from Carter, whether he was just trying to sell me a release or whatever, but I switched to, I know you don't like them, but it's a thumb button. It's the Carter Wise Choice. And that's still what I shoot today. And that's what I recommend for most people, just because I have such a good experience. But so I got rid of and it is a great release. You still shoot one, the Wise guy.
Wise guy. Yeah.
The Spot Hog Wise guy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, great trigger release. But whatever it was, that's what I was shooting when I had target panic. So I had to kind of start from scratch. So I switched to the Wise Choice and I started with the trainer. And it was at the end of the season. It was the right time for me to do it. I just shot that trainer for, I don't know what it was, a month, 2 months, like somewhere in there. I wasn't shooting my bow. I wasn't like aiming at anything. I was just familiarizing myself with with that new trigger process and just with what that felt like to go off. There was nothing negative that could happen. I was just shooting it. And at some point when I was totally comfortable with that, I reintroduced the bow without reintroducing aiming. So we was blind bailing. So this is shooting my bow, eyes closed at a target that's like 2 yards away, can't miss type of deal. So now I'm just still same thing, just process, familiar with the release, familiar with what the bow feels like going off, no aiming, no negative thing that could happen by me missing. And eventually, after another month or so of that, it was like, okay, now open your eyes at 2 yards, right? And just shoot it at 2 yards. It's still almost impossible to miss. Like there is no negative consequence. So just shoot, just do what you've been doing at 2 yards, after a few weeks at 5 yards, after a few weeks at 10 yards. And I literally, it's like if there's any bit of a negative connotation, it's like, go back, stay there, stay at 10 yards for another 2 weeks. And eventually I got to the point where I was like, I wasn't going to have a negative experience. It was all positive, and I was hitting the mark every single time.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yep. So like Joel, what you just described, Joel will do that with you, but in 1 hour.
Okay.
And Joel's process is so 2 + 2 = 4 that you'll never go back. There is no negative. You cannot go backwards. There's no negative connotation. Like
wow.
Always 2 + 2 = 4. And so like I highly urge you guys to have him on as a guest, to buy his course, and like Jeremy, you shoot a Wise guy.
Yeah.
I think you would do yourself a huge amount of justice to switch from a Wise guy to like a Carter like Mike.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen that release?
Yes, I have.
Like you can then.
What is that?
Like your Wise guy is so. Your Wise guy is so sensitive that when you get your finger on that trigger, like any movement at all, and your bow's going off.
It's going off.
Like
yeah.
With the like Mike or B3 or B whatever makes some of these releases. I have a Scott Rhino that I use when I shoot index. When I shoot an index, I'm coming to full draw and I'm wrapping my finger all the way around that target or all the way around that.
Yeah.
And then I'm opening my hand and I'm moving my arm as a tube backwards. So there's no trigger punt. When I come to full draw, I'm wrapped all the way around and then I'm just like my hinge. I'm slowly pulling and
just
pop,
pulling
it
it
goes
through.
off. And then Joel's release, which I have 2 of them here.
Yeah, and it really is the same thing. I mean, whether you're
but-
pulling with your index or you're pulling like my thumb button,
I just can't wrap around on mine, or it's gonna go. Like even if I
It's
put
gonna
the
go.
tension,
you can't, because I did. I felt like my form when I was shooting that wise guy was really good. I just
still think. I mean, you're there, but you're still kind of you don't. There's
It's
not
hot.
enough movement to come
hot,
through.
yeah, for sure.
I mean, and that's with taking
And with-
all the sensitivity out of it with that Allen screw as well. I mean, to where it's
Yeah, with
a
all-
hard trigger, heavy
Uh-huh.
trigger.
With these other releases, I just think you would do yourself a service in what Joel entered in, which I love, and I don't like thumb buttons, but Joel's is genius. And so you
why not, Donnie? Why don't you like
wrap
thumb
your
buttons?
thumb around the. I just don't like the movement. Like the movement feels really foreign to me for aiming.
Yeah.
Like I feel like I'm aiming, and then I feel like I don't really know what I want to do. It feels like too big of a movement and too uncertain of a movement. But with Joel's new release, you start pressing on it and then it clicks.
Mm-hmm.
So you're kind of going through this pre-ignition movement before the bow is going off. You're getting comfortable with your thumb on the button. Then you're slowly squeezing it and you hear click. And then you just keep slowly squeezing it and the bow goes off. So like you kind of go through this. You're able to get into that. You're able to get into your aim and then leave your aim and get into your trigger pull process. And it's just so slow. And because you're slowly going to that click, you already have that movement. There is no punch. You're not going to punch it. You can't punch it. Like you're not going to punch. You're just slowly pulling into that click. And then you just continue with that slow pull.
Yeah.
I just think you guys should, it's called it's from Stan and it's called On X. And I think it'd be a game changer for you as a thumb button. I think it'd be a game changer. And really, Jeremy, I think the Like Mike or one of these other releases where you can actually get your finger around that and increase your spring pressure. And then get it. One of the things that I learned from Joel that I was doing wrong is I'd wrap my finger around that trigger and then I was holding on to my release.
Yep.
And so when I would pull, I was pulling sometimes the trigger and the release all at once, and my bow wasn't going off.
Yeah.
So then Joel taught me, like, dude, stop. You don't need the strap to go with you.
Right.
You wrap around just the trigger, and then you're pulling just the trigger back, and then like I said, it's the accuracy is stupid.
I think that's the mentality there with the holding onto the release is because my trigger, so even, I've got a hard trigger on that wise guy, it's still super sensitive. So I have to, when I hook on to draw, it's me holding onto the release to draw. Like my finger's nowhere over the trigger at all because it's super sensitive. Like, so I'm back in, then I'm coming in to lay over that trigger, right?
Yeah.
Well, in my mind, I'm still holding on to the release because of just the entire motions of it anyways.
Yeah.
There definitely are advantages to that index trigger. Like I know it's funny. So because this ties into our conversation here too, I've got a buddy, a good friend of mine in Ohio that's like a lifelong crossbow guy. I think Jed's like 30, mid 30s or whatever. And he just, he got into hunting slowly over time. And he's like, oh, that's kind of interesting, this and that. And so now he and I hunt, I hunt a lot of his properties and I try to, I come from more, I think, of a hunting background. And so, but he and I have connected on this stuff anyways. I got him a bow this year. I got a
Venom 31.
A Venom 31 from Hoyt. And so I hooked him up with everything that I shoot and stuff. And so I was spending some time with him in his yard yesterday or a couple days ago, just trying to coach him early on. And I was like, man, I really think take for granted all of the stuff that I know about or that I have, just accumulated like this shot process over, since I've been shooting a bow since I was 10 years old. And to try to put that all into like, okay, so do this. And at the same time, so here's your breathing pattern. Here's your thought process. Here's the form on your elbow and also on how this is all going to go off. And I realized I was really struggling to get that across to him without like overwhelming him. It's like, hey, all this stuff has to happen at once, but you have to be totally relaxed and not thinking about it at the same time.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, man, like even like a guy like that, friends of mine that I'm getting into archery, I'm telling him like, you're not allowed to buy a bow, or I'm not going to give you a bow. You're not going to shoot until you take Joel's course. Like
Yeah.
you're taking Joel's course, or you're not going to shoot, because if you take Joel's course, just like I said, if you learn math in a funny manner, you get all sorts of wrong answers. But if you learn it in a linear fashion, and literally Joel kind of has this, I'll put it this way, it's like Joel's shooting process is kind of like walking into a house. And so you have to go through the kitchen to get into the bedroom.
Yeah.
And then the bedroom is where you're going to shoot, but you can't shoot in the bedroom until you go through the kitchen. Whereas a lot of people with shooting a bow, they want 1 foot in the kitchen, they want 1 foot in the bedroom. And he's like, no, I'm going to teach you. You have to leave the kitchen to get to the bedroom, and you can't shoot until you're in the bedroom. And so you go through this process, and it's extremely linear. And unless you don't have determination, I've been to probably 6 or 7 of Joel's clinics. I've seen one guy leave his clinic still a mess when he showed up. And I watched the guy, and he would literally he'd come to full draw, and Joel's like, okay, now let's go through the process. I won't tell you his process, but he's like, let's go through the process. He's like, okay, wrap your thumb around the barrel of your release. And it was really funny too, because this guy had like $2,000 in releases in his pocket. Like he had John Dudley's releases. He had Forrest Carter's releases. He had stands. You could tell he was trying to buy his way out of target panic.
Oh, yeah.
And Joe was like, okay, now just wrap
Buy your way out of
your thumb around the barrel. And the guy would go, and he'd shoot. And Joe's like, okay, nope.
Don't do that.
You're not going to do that. And every time I watched the guy, every time he'd get to the barrel, the guy would just smash it. And Joel's like, stop doing that. And the guy was like, you know what? I don't think this is working, Joel. And Joel's
wow.
like, and I asked Joel when we were leaving, I was like, what was that? And he's like, the guy has zero determination.
Yeah.
Zero. He doesn't want to change. He doesn't want to wrap his thumb around the barrel slit. He has no ambition. But I'm telling you guys, Joel's system, which is why he's kind of taking on art. Literally every archer, every hunter needs to take his class. Period. End of story. It'll change the way you shoot. I promise you.
Is there applicability on that from a traditional side too, Donnie? Like
100%. Yeah, it's all the same stuff. Yeah. So I didn't realize this, but when guys are shooting like recurves, guys are kind of doing the same thing. They have this same when he started telling me about target panic with recurves, I was like, what do you mean you have target panic? You don't even have a sight. Like you're just coming to full draw and you're kind of going wing.
Yeah.
But you're not doing, and once I learned, you're not doing that at all, right? You're coming into your back the same way. Like I shoot my longbow right now off the front of my face. And so I'm pushing through the target, and then I shoot an untriggered release. So almost everyone that shoots a longbow or recurve is shooting with a mechano receptor device. They're making a click with their nail. They have a clicker on the limb, right? You guys have seen limb clickers.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen one of those?
Yeah.
Yep. You're coming to full draw, and you come to full draw, and then when your limb clicks, that's when you release, and that's what's making it subconscious release for you. That's what your hinge is, right? I don't know when my hinge is going to go off. So when you hit your clicker on your recurve, you don't know when it's going to go off. Or if you're dragging your thumbnail or fingernail, sometimes guys will push their fingers together, and when their fingers go pop, that's when they release, right? Joel does this thing where he'll push his cheek out, and then he'll push his cheek, and when it makes that little fart noise, he releases then. Or
interesting.
A friend of his came out with a really good button that you put in your mouth, and you slowly bite this thing. But for me, I shoot an untriggered shot. So I come to full draw, I aim, and then I find my tension, and then just when I feel like everything's ready, and it's not fast, but when I feel like everything's ready, I just release, and that's just. But it's the exact same shooting process. The same thing with a pistol. It's the same thing with a rifle, right? Like I put the crosshairs on something with a rifle. Crosshairs are moving around. I'm totally fine with it. I'm trying to make that wobble as slow as possible. And when I was just shooting with that Polaris thing, I was shooting a 223 at closer targets, like 400 and 500 yards. Never shot this gun before in my life. Thing was a piece of crap, actually. The ranch owned it. But I take the rifle, and safety's off, and I'm pulling on the trigger, pulling, and I stop. And I look back at the guy, I click the safety down, and I go, hey, something's wrong. Like, the gun's not going off. He's like, just keep going. The trigger's really tough.
Yeah.
So he's like, okay. I put on fire, pull. I'm like, I put it back on safe. I go, hey, something's wrong. He's like, Donnie, he's like, the trigger is horrible.
Yeah.
Just stick with it. I go, okay. So I'm shooting at an antelope target. A little steel antelope, looks exactly like an antelope, 500 yards away. I have it rested on a sandbag, but that's it. Just on a sandbag. I'm not on a bipod, nothing like that. And I'm watching my crosshairs, you guys. Like, let's say this is the antelope. My crosshairs are like, because he told me, he's like, you're going to have to be above the back to hit this thing with the
drop.
223.
Yep.
And so I'm literally watching my crosshairs are doing, and then I'm like, goes off, and it was a metal target. So the guy's like, heart shot, bing.
Yep.
And heart shot, bing, boom. Like, I've never shot this gun in my life, but my process is the same no matter what weapon I'm shooting.
Yeah.
I'm just sitting there shooting this thing. Like, I've always heard, and again, I'm not bragging, I've just learned from really good guys, but I've always heard of how hard pistols are to shoot.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I bought a pistol and I put a red dot on it, which is, of course, really accurate cheating. And I went out to my range. I didn't want to shoot in front of everyone, but I went out to my range by myself, and I know the mechanics of a pistol. But after I got it sighted in, I literally was going back to like 80 and 90 yards. Like, my first time shooting a pistol, shooting a human-sized, head-sized steel target, hitting it every time at 90 yards. Because I'm literally just putting my red dot on it, holding my pistol with proper form, and I'm just sitting there squeezing through. I have a Glock, and I'm just squeezing through the trigger. Ding! It's like same process. I'm not sitting there going, oh, God, I hope I hit it.
Yeah.
I'm just making the wobble as small as possible with that red dot. And then I'm just slowly squeezing the trigger until the gun surprises me every single time it goes off. And ding.
It's funny you say that, man, because I shot my first long range rifle competition this year, and I'm not I gun hunt every once in a while, but I'm a bow hunter. Like, I'm an archery guy, and so I was shooting. I shot a 6.5 with it during that competition, and again I shot it literally the day I put the scope on and sighted it in. I shot it that day, and I didn't shoot it again until the competition. And there were 65, 70 guys in this competition, and I think I finished 26th. And these guys, I assume,
and you probably shot lights out.
Yeah, but it was weird. Like, I'm shooting at 700, 800 yards, and it's like I'm almost giving the credit to the gun, but part of it is just it's the mindset of, I just feel comfortable, to your point. Like, I knew when everything was solid, and I'm sure my crosshairs weren't as tight as most people, but, I'm shooting an Ipsum target or a 12-inch circle or whatever, and it's just like, 10 shots in a row, boom, hit, and it's a rhythm, it's a muscle memory thing. And not to say that, like, brag about it by any means, but you find yourself in these repeat situations where, if you become, really proficient at archery or whatever it is, you can apply it to a lot of different things.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's what I'm talking about. Like, you're hitting that 12-inch circle every shot at 800 yards.
Yeah.
Which is incredible. It's just that the guys that are the best in the world, they have something like Levi and like Bodie. They have something that makes their crosshair wobble like a fifth of yours. So they're hitting the center of that target. So they win the matches and you come in 20th.
Yeah.
But really you're the first place guy to you. It's really nothing.
Yeah.
Like, if you were in war, if you had to kill another human, or you're shooting a deer for your family, like, Jeremy, you're good.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. I don't need to hit.
Philip
I don't need
down
to
the
hit
street
that.
can, like,
yes.
You know what I mean? Like, just because he can, like, cross his T's and dot his I's a little bit better, who cares? Still, if you get the drop on him, he's done.
Yeah, that's funny, man. It is kind of it's so weird when you see those different because it's all mental, right? Yeah, there is a physical asset around that, in terms of what you need to do, but it is literally a mental thing. Even on some of those targets, it's like 10 shots at each target station. In the first 2 shots, my mind has adjusted so much to where the next 7 I'm on target, right? I'm off on the first one, high or left or right. Boom, I make an adjustment. Okay, I'm almost there. Boom, now I'm hitting. Repeat. And you just do it. That's why Bodie's shooting 1,000 arrows. He goes out there, picks up his bow, and it's it's just instant. It's just natural and instinctive. And I mean, that's what we all hope in a bow stand, right? When that opportunity comes through, we all practice and shoot and repeat so that it is hopefully instinctive when that opportunity comes up.
Well, and that's the thing that I'm even saying. So I totally agree with you, but also like with Bodie, because he uses his dad's system,
Yeah.
none of that really matters. Like he doesn't have to, his mental game and his repeatability has nothing to do with emotion. Like he is just, that's why he won Vegas at, was it 15?
15 years old.
Won Vegas at 15? Yeah, because shooting that target is, and like he told me this year he lost Vegas. I think he came in 4th.
Yep.
And I was like, Bodie, like, because I thought he was just going to start stacking up. And he's like, oh, I will. He's like, I will. He's like, I made a fatal error this year. And he goes, I know that I made it. And now I know what I did wrong. And he's like, but there's no room for interpretation. He's just,
That's so crazy.
he comes to full draw and he buries his pin in that center and he does his job every single time. And his mind, even though his heart's beating out of his chest, his mind won't let him shortcut. There's no shortcuts. To get to the bedroom, he's got to go through the kitchen. Can't get in the bedroom until he's done in the kitchen. So he's got to get through the kitchen. So for him to shoot that arrow at the target at Vegas, doesn't care if it's in his backyard or in Vegas, he's got to go through the kitchen first. Can't shoot that arrow until he gets to the bedroom.
Yeah, that'll be cool. We'll definitely have to check out that course because that sounds awesome.
Well, for no other, Jed's a great excuse to pick that up, and I'm sure Joel can explain a lot. In fact, I found myself wishing that the guy that taught me form it, which was the bow shop we were at yesterday, and it was small tweaks, from year to year. It's the bow shop that I've been going to since I was 10.
Yep.
Tim, the guy that he and Jason run it. When I was showing Jed in the backyard, I was like, man, I wish Tim was here, to kind of just like give him the same subtle coaching,
He was coaching us yesterday when
he was
we were
coaching
in
us yesterday, and I was so grateful for it. But
Yeah.
the reality too, though, is I do think even with the perfect process, like it does take time. I think just time, muscle memory, shooting your bow. The thing with Jed too is like, and I don't necessarily know how to overcome this. He's right. He's left eye dominant, but he's right-handed.
That's me.
Really?
Yeah, big time. Like when I'm shooting a shotgun, like I can read the words on the barrel.
Wow.
So you're right eye dominant?
Right eye dominant.
Yeah.
I'm left eye dominant. I shoot right-handed.
Okay.
I'm left eye dominant. Shoot right-handed. So I should, in theory, if I was just learning today, you would try to teach me how to shoot a bow left-handed.
Yeah.
But you don't?
No, I shoot right-handed.
Interesting. So how does that work? Because I always thought you had to shoot to the eye.
No, it's just like I have to squint my eye or just like
I guess you just can't have your other one open. Yeah.
Yeah, but sometimes you start to learn your sight picture, and I shoot my longbow with both eyes open.
I was gonna ask if you shot trad both eyes open.
Yep, I do, and often I'm also shooting my compound very often with both eyes open. I just know what the sight picture looks like.
Interesting.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Well, I hope I'm not messing that up for Jed, because we got him a left-handed bow. That's what he wanted. But I can't imagine myself. I'm right eye dominant, right-handed. Even if I was left eye dominant, trying to shoot the other way, like it's just so awkward. I've tried to just mess with his bow a little bit.
Part of that long range competition. One of the stations is to shoot opposite hand, opposite eye.
The opposite.
Yeah, and it frankly, it was the best station I performed at.
Huh.
Like
You're like, am I left eye dominant?
Yeah, it was like 9 out of 10 out of. Well, it was just it's just all. I don't know. You just know.
Jeremy,
it.
do you want to know why?
Yes, I do.
Because you went slower.
Yeah, I took my time.
That's why. Because your mind didn't have a shortcut for the left side. It has all the bullshit shortcuts for the right side.
Yeah.
At least it thinks it does. So you skip steps. On the left side, you're a fish out of water. So your brain is pulling the trigger slower. Your wobble on the target is smaller because your brain doesn't have any shortcuts for the left side.
Interesting. Yeah, that's
why.
That's crazy, man. Yeah, because I definitely my first shot was 7 seconds into the stage, whereas on the normal side, it's 2 seconds in, I'm firing the first shot off.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's wild.
Makes sense.
And honestly, I ran out of time because it's a time stage. You have 10 shots. Yep. I was 9 for 9, and I ran out of time because I was slower.
Going slow. And that's part of the thing of with Joel's process, like, not to make this podcast about Joel, but I've just learned so much from him. Like, you know, you have to go to the kitchen, get to the bedroom. You can't shoot till you get to the bedroom. You don't have to go through the kitchen fast.
Right.
Go through the kitchen slow, enjoy it, take your time. And then when you get to the bedroom, like, you have a separate job, but you have to shut the door between the kitchen and the bedroom before you can even enter into the bedroom. Like, you just can't get in there until the door is shut. And so, like, that's the whole thing, is slowing this process down. And same with like shooting an animal, or, you know, like, imagine the pressures of having to, you know, shoot a guy in time of combat, and like slowing down, and, you know, he's trying to get the drop on you, you're trying to get the drop on him. And like that whole thing, you watch the guys in their ghillie suits, right? Whether it be in a movie or you're envisioning like a real scenario, like that guy's in a ghillie suit and he has this guy next to him calling this. And I have a lot of friends that are real-time snipers that I get to work with now. And like, you know, they're clicking their safety off, and like, they're, you know, this from shooting your PRS, you know, their cheeks are buried into their stock, right? No interpretation here. This is how I shoot.
Yep.
My trigger. No interpretation. This is how I pull my trigger. I know my crosshair wobble. I know what my rifle is going to do, but there's no interpretation. I cannot do the fourth job until the third job's complete.
Yep.
If you try to shortcut all these jobs, you're a mess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's wild, man.
You don't have any target panic, right?
No, never have.
Never have.
Luckily. Yeah, knock on wood. I don't know. The kind of unknown is recurve. So I started off shooting a recurve when I was 9, 10, 11 years old. And then went away to compounds since then. And last year was the first time I really started picking recurve back up. And I love it because it's just challenge, experience, everything around it. I'm comfortable with it, but I'm not confident with it, if that makes sense.
You didn't have anybody show you how to shoot it, right?
No, I just picked it up and...
Do you think you're shooting it? Do you think you're doing it right?
I have no idea. I have no idea whatsoever, right? yeah, I have no idea.
Because we all had at least some input, coaching on how to shoot a compound.
Fortunately, there's, YouTube and everything, so I try to watch.
You are watching some stuff.
Yeah, but okay. I still don't know. In the hard part for me, and you know this, like on my bow, because I shoot that trigger release, I have a kisser button. That's my anchor point. Yeah. So Donnie, I'm kind of like you. I don't think I have a trigger on my recurve. Like there's not something that clicks it's just I feel everything kind of come together, and then I know, and almost in attention.
You are looking for an anchor point, though, yeah.
Yes, yeah. I do.
Okay.
But that's still different for me, coming from a compound trigger where it's like kisser button, I'm on, let it rip. I don't have that facial thing. Now I do with my recurve. But it's 20 years of compound bow trying to exit my brain to a recurve side.
Sure.
So, yeah, I don't know if I'm shooting correctly by any means. Do I shoot 3 fingers under? Do I shoot? I personally am shooting two under, 1 above, but I've seen a lot of people say, well, I would always shoot 3 under. I don't know.
I started shooting 3 under. But how I would shoot, I started shooting like this. My anchor point would be right here.
Yep.
And then when I release, my fingernails were cutting a hole in my face.
Uh-huh.
So Joel's like, you're a very determined guy, so you're able to take that pain. Like, it got to the point so bad that when I would release, blood would spray on Joel's face.
Oh, boy.
So
wow, that's intense.
So he's like, hey, we got to change something up.
Yeah.
So then I went to split finger.
Yep.
And I would come over my cheekbone.
Yep.
And then I would release. I was releasing like that. But I think because I'm left eye dominant, right-handed, like, I could be decently accurate that way. But also sometimes my arrow would go, 18 inches to the left.
Because of your left eye dominant.
And I wouldn't know. Yeah. To where now I do a 3. My bow's right here. 1 second.
Sorry,
so now, you guys, I come in right off my face like this.
Yep.
And to where now, because I'm coming in like right off my chin, I'm looking right down my arrow. Yep. So now, before I was kind of like shooting things like this.
To the side,
or like this, I guess. So I'm looking at things like this. So that's what I'm looking at for my arrow.
Yep.
And now I'm looking at things like this.
Yep. That makes sense. Yeah, because I'm coming off the front of my face as well. Yep.
And then when I release, I'm literally like my shoulders down. I'm pushing through the target.
Yep.
And then when I release, my scapula is buried.
Yep.
And then I'm kind of just going,
just trying to
pop
it
just
back.
Popping through.
See, that's what my thing, because I'm shooting off the front of my face now that I've gotten more comfortable with it. Before I was trying to come back further, but two things. Number one, I was struggling at 50,
That's what I'm noticing
pounds.
as Donnie's pulling is the draw length is not nearly as long.
That's the compromise that I had to make in my head, is that I thought I was giving up draw length because I couldn't get it back and anchored.
Yeah, because with your compound, you're locked in behind your
exactly.
jaw.
Where this is like I'm almost cheating my draw length because it's I'm ending up shorter on my face basically. Yeah. That was the mental thing that I was having the most issues with when I started, and I was super inconsistent because my anchor point was changing every time. Trying to figure out where did I need to be to hold it. The HUNTR Podcast is brought to you by Hoyt Archery.
Dude, where would we be without our Hoyt bows?
Probably shooting crossbows
or a Matthews. Yeah.
One and the same.
Yeah.
But in all seriousness, we love being Hoyt guys because you stand out when you're in this room full of other people that shoot these other types of bows. I feel like the Hoyt guys just stick out.
Dude, it's just a legit bow. I mean, especially that carbon riser, man. I mean, I know that they've got several other aluminum lines as well, but for me, I'm shooting that RX5 in the carbon model. They've since come out with the RX7, and I can't tell you how much I love being a Hoyt guy amongst a sea full of Matthews guys. So we're out there, I think, proving them wrong, shooting 80 pounds and killing stuff.
Hey, man, if you want to get serious, get Hoyt. No, so what Jared was saying about, being that it comes up on kind of the front of your face, it feels like your draw length isn't long, right? And that was my hardest kind of conceptualization there of, I was trying to get it back further on my, on my cheekbone or something. Yes. But frankly, I was struggling because I was shooting a 52-pound recurve, like getting it back that extra 4 or 5 inches. I mean, it's a by the time I got there, I was shaking so bad that I had to go. Like I had to break on it.
Yes. Yeah.
Versus now where I'm anchoring more on the front of my face, I feel much more confident in the slow process to the front of my face to hold, and then I can, break her back.
Yeah.
It's a weird.
And that's the same for me. Like it felt weird to come to the front at first because like it does seem so short.
Yeah.
But really my arrow is still it's a whole weird process, right? Because my arrow's only flying like, I don't even know. It's like 150 feet a second, something like that. But still, I'm shooting, a 600 grain arrow, if you will.
Yep.
And with a fixed blade broadhead, and when it hits a deer or elk, moose, grizzly bear, whatever, like it's blowing through it.
What grain broadhead are you shooting?
200.
Yep.
And I'm shooting a Cayuga out of Australia right now. Kind of has it's a freaking really bad
super sharp, super tough.
Super sharp, and I have one right here. This is one of my practice arrows, and I'm shooting aluminums this year, which I'm stoked about. The old XX75s.
Oh yeah.
But this is what the broadhead looks like.
Oh, very cool.
Single bevel. And then I don't have them on here right now, but there'd be bleeders.
You have bleeders on them.
There will be bleeders on here. So like when this thing hits, like I shot basically a 400-pound, 7-foot 1-inch black bear with this year.
Jeez.
And I shot him in the last minute of light, and my arrow went in. I didn't realize, it's my mistake, but I thought he was more broadside, and he was actually pretty severely quartering to. And I hit him just slightly off my mark, but it went through basically like back of ribs, single lung, guts, and then hit him in the ham, hit him on the inside thigh. So this is a 400-pound, 7-foot black bear, and the arrow blew through his thigh.
Dang.
Out of my longbow. So like,
are those like the old, old school double X75s, like that we would have shot when I was a kid as a compound?
Yeah, this is like from 1983.
That's freaking awesome.
That's the arrow you're talking about?
That's what I'm shooting
aluminum
this
arrow?
year because they just shoot so good. And then I have I designed my wraps with Kyle Davison of DCA Custom Arrows, a freaking unbelievable arrow maker. And then there's a guy out of Indiana. called Wild Fletch. It's so freaking cool. He makes all of my arrows out of wild turkey feathers.
Whoa.
Wow.
So
That's
he
very
dyes
cool.
them and cuts them and does whatever I need out of them. But they are, I moved them downstairs, but they are stunning. And so he did some for me this last year that were mint green. And then these ones I'm going to have done as kind of a bright red as a tribute to Chuck Adams. But the feathers last, because they're from wild turkeys.
Yeah.
The feathers last an incredible amount of time. Yeah.
Damn. That's cool.
Really,
man.
really tough.
Something nostalgic about
what-
those aluminum arrows.
What's your
dude.
who made your longbow then this year?
This guy named Eric Hoff from St. Patrick Lake Longbows, and this is called a Mushin stick, and so
What's the wood?
The wood is bamboo.
Okay.
This black is G10, which is kind of like that indestructible mega plastic that a lot of the bow makers use. Like
Yep.
this is, I guess this was quite a discovery when they discovered G10, because it's like they use drill bits. I really don't know what I'm talking about, but I've been told they use drill bits, like almost like to work on like diamond type stuff, because
wow.
that stuff is so dense and so tough. And then the front of my bow is actually carbon fiber,
Oh.
but
Dang.
but I didn't like that look. So Eric went through and he put a little bit of a material on the front of it, kind of a sealant, and then he lightly sanded it and then painted it the red that I wanted to kind of emulate. You guys know who Chuck Adams
Oh
is?
yeah.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So Chuck always used red fletchings on his XX78 Super Slams because he could see red and deer can't, right? So he always used, and then the back is kind of that traditional kind of mint green,
Yeah.
if you will, or the belly, I guess. This is the back. That stuff is so weird. But Eric Hoff, and it's a takedown, right? So the grip comes apart, so I can take this, like, fit in my backpack to go flying into Alaska or whatever.
That's
It's
awesome,
badass,
man.
though.
Very cool. Are you pretty much hunting exclusively with that this year?
Yeah, and I did I hunted with Flip's bow all of last year. I didn't touch a compound. I haven't touched I've hunted once with a compound in 2 years.
Wow.
You were
That's
saying at the
awesome.
beginning though, you wanting to get back into it.
Well, I just want to shoot. I just like shooting different things. Like I love rifle shooting. I love pistol shooting, and I don't want to get away from necessarily my skill set, but I have I used to shoot for PSE, but I just think it's probably wise for me to have a compound set up and ready to go. And I have a big project being offered to me right now from another company. They want to do did you guys see that film that I did called Winds of Adak with Benelli?
Yep.
So this other company wants to do a version of that, but much, much smaller, and hopefully much less dangerous than that film. But, they want to do something, and they're like, we want to film you hunting. This is not a hunting company or a hunting brand, but they're like, we want to film you hunting and all this stuff. And they're like, it'd be great. They only want to film for like 3 or 4 days, and they're like, it'd be great if you killed a deer. And so like, I really don't feel handicapped very much at all. Obviously, I can shoot much better and much further with a compound, but I just think like on a project like that, it'd probably be advantageous for me to, be able to grab a compound.
Sure.
Like, okay, let's go hunt deer for 3 or 4 days and I'll shoot a deer. I'm not going to necessarily maybe shoot a giant, but I'll shoot a doe or an older buck or whatever if I get the opportunity. And
it might look more relatable too from a compound archery side versus It's so funny to think that, but I mean, the trad bow population is very, very small in today's society. Very, very small.
Yeah.
Especially with the advent of crossbows. I mean,
I would say even the compound bow guys are dwindling.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, crossbows probably predominate most most archers.
Oh, I hate that. God, I hate that.
Yeah,
they do for sure, especially in the East. I mean, we
get
analyze the numbers
for it
quite a bit.
Pretty hard. And well,
dude, the numbers don't lie. Like, what was it? Was it over 50 or was it 75% of Ohio's 70% of Ohio's
archers
deer harvest last year? The archery harvest was crossbow.
Yeah, stupid.
It's crazy.
So stupid. Like if you're an able-bodied male under the age of 60, get out of your.
Thank you, Donnie Vincent. We get shit for it. We get shit for it a lot, man. And it's
because we bring it up so often. I try not to harp on it, But
the reality is, it has such a massive impact on archery hunting in the United States. I mean, the fact that more and more states are making it part like a legalized archery equipment as crossbows, like it is changing the face of archery.
Well, see, I'd be interested
so
to get
fast.
your guys' perspective, because you guys are both shooting with recurves now. It's like it would be a similar advent of crossbows to recurve bows as crossbows are to compound bows, correct?
No. No. Because shooting a compound bow still takes, it still takes a tremendous amount of skill to shoot one well, whether it be 5 yards or 100 yards. But a crossbow is, to me, that's a killing tool. It should be looked at like a firearm. Like I bought a bow for my dad when he was probably in his upper 50s. He had never bow hunted before, and I took him bow hunting for a year or two with a compound. He actually shot a small doe once, and it was awesome. But he'd come to full draw, and he was at the legal minimum in Wisconsin. I think it was 40 pounds
for weight. Yeah.
He'd come to full draw, and like he was shaking.
Yeah.
And like he had to shoot within like 5 seconds, or else he had to let down.
Yeah.
He only had a few. He wasn't a very strong guy. So I was like, you know what, Dad? Next year we're gonna switch to a crossbow. We did. It was awesome. We started killing deer. He actually killed the biggest deer on one of my leases here in Wisconsin, which was so sick. You can see it like on my Instagram, but he killed I think it was a 7.5 or 8.5-year-old whitetail, like 142-inch 8-pointer, absolutely massive buck. We killed him on November 14th one time in a misting rainstorm over at Beanfield, regardless, but it was awesome. But that's what it's for. It's for people with disabilities. It's for older gentlemen or women. And if you are an able-bodied male that wants to shoot a crossbow in season, it needs to be a gun season. It needs to be during gun season, or it needs to be if you want it in archery season, if you want to have a crossbow season in archery season, have it be 2 or 3 days long and have it be after the rut.
Yeah.
And that's what it should be. No one else should be shooting, because what's happening is, unfortunately, archery sales are way up. Archery license sales are way up. So all the states sit there and go, oh yeah, this is great. We get to take that money and spend it on, probably embezzlement, really, if we're actually crossing T's and dotting I's. They really are padding probably their pockets. And so that money's not going back into wildlife. It's doing anything but going back into wildlife. They're literally just pocketing it to do whatever it is. And really, I think I'd much rather, you guys are in Pennsylvania, you said, but you hunt Ohio.
Yeah.
I'd rather right now, my archery tag in Illinois is $400.
Yep.
I'd rather my archery tag be $2,000, and you don't allow crossbow hunters in Illinois until the short gun seasons. There's no difference. Anyone has to learn a major skill to shoot a compound bow. And I have no, if you're a trad shooter and you're against compound bow hunting, you're a moron. If you're a trad shooter and you think, oh, it's got training wheels, it's got a sight, you're a moron. It's still extremely difficult to shoot a compound bow. And I would challenge any of those trad guys, which are the weirdest group of human beings on the face of the earth, potentially.
Yes.
I would challenge any of these trad guys that sit there and go, oh, you got training wheels? All right, buddy. Then let's go get 2 identical compounds.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna shoot a compound. You're gonna shoot a compound. Let's see what's up.
Yeah.
Let's see who can shoot whatever, because it really comes down to a weapon. But when you're talking crossbows, I have no problems with crossbows. But if they're gonna be used during archery season, it needs to be with somebody with a disability or an elderly person that can't hold the weight of a bow at full draw.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I don't even want to hear about it, because you're killing too many deer. And of course they're selling too many licenses, and now your harvest. I think Illinois is the same thing. I think the archery harvest is now up to the
it is
gun harvest.
Yeah.
And so people, and people might look at this and say, oh, have something to say, but I could literally give a rat's ass what your opinion is.
I agree, man.
This is how it should be.
Yeah. I mean, my arguments are always my 7-year-old can pick up a crossbow and kill a deer at 30 yards. He can't pick up a compound and even draw it, let alone kill a deer at 30 yards. That's the only argument I need.
Yeah. And there's no barrier of entry. You didn't earn anything.
Yeah.
You haven't invested at all in this skill whatsoever. If I'm learning how to build a fire using a bow drill, I'm really learning how to build a fire. Even if using a flintstone, I'm really learning how to use a tool to build a fire. But if somebody's going to give you a grill lighter and a gallon of gas, no, we're not both fire starters.
That is a great analogy. That might be the best one I've heard yet, Donnie.
Huh. So Donnie,
I just think no one has any justification. Like, this argument cannot be. And really, and a lot of people will say, I hate this term. Also, people say, well, I'm a meat hunter. Well, I'm, and then like, somebody might say like, I'm I hunt for trophy bucks or whatever, or I'm a meat hunter. And really, I think on average, polls have shown that if people are hunting more wild country and bigger bucks, that their pure enjoyment goes up of the experience. So even if you're going to shoot a smaller buck, and that's your prerogative, and you should have zero, no one should feel any shame for shooting a doe or a yearling buck, a basket 6, whatever, like if that's what you want, like 100%, that's your prerogative. You should be able to do that, but it should be in a woods that also holds mature deer.
Sure.
That's I think anyway.
And what do you mean? What do you mean? Like
elaborate
on that.
There are people like, let me just pick on Lee and Tiffany for a second.
Sure.
There are people like Lee and Tiffany who only want to shoot 200-inch
mature
megas,
bucks.
right?
Yeah.
And then there are guys that are just go out in the woods and they have their rifle or their shotgun or their bow, and they're like, any legal deer that comes by me, I'm going to shoot it because I just want the meat, the skin, whatever.
Yeah.
I totally agree with both philosophies. I just think everyone should be able to hunt in an area that is truly wild, whether that be, and by that I mean kind of the embodiment of the woods, and there should be mature bucks in that woods, in that state, whatever it is. Like, you should be doing the best by the wildlife as humanly possible to be a conservationist and then be a hunter.
I understand. Yeah. So you're saying,
does that make sense?
Yeah, I think
the
so.
harvest is too high.
Yeah. Well, like the deer herd should be managed in such a way that we do have a healthy age structure. We do have mature deer, but there needs to be a healthy enough population that, people should be allowed to shoot whatever they want to shoot.
That's right.
That comes back to the argument that we have often about opportunity, right? And I blame states mainly, but it's the constant creation of more opportunity by liberalizing seasons, bag limits, weapons, whatever, right? And their thought of it being a good thing, I don't look at like just more and more opportunity as being good for our wildlife resources. Mm-hmm. Nor do I think is it good for our hunting community. We've talked about I'm sure the three of us, when we were younger, we had a grind to succeed at hunting. And frankly, the more opportunity and the more liberalization that's out there for seasons and weapons and everything, the less a new hunter has to work to become successful in hunting.
And the passion
I took every shortcut possible.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I realized, holy cow, like you guys, and I've told this story a few times, I guess, maybe I almost poached a deer one night. I literally almost illegally poached a deer because I was hunting this huge buck in Wisconsin. It's probably 175 inches, probably 7 years old, something that I watched him for years and years. And I was hunting him on this property, and it's funny. I told this story to a game warden once, and he just kind of like,
but I didn't do it. So it's
I didn't. But I was,
and if I did, you'd never know about it.
I had to leave early to go to an appointment, and I had been hunting this deer, so I was like, okay, I have to get out of the tree by 4:15, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So I got out of the tree. I got out of the tree during legal light, but by the time I got to my pickup truck, it was after legal light by like 5 minutes or something like that. But I was walking through this bean field, and I come around a corner out of this woods, and I have to sneak past this bean field, and I look in the bean field, and there's this 175-inch whitetail, and he's probably 20 yards from me. I've got my bow. I got my quiver. I've got my release on. I'm wearing a headlamp. It's on red. But like the deer sees the red, or he sees the glowing or whatever, and he starts coming towards me. And I was like, oh my God. And it was like a minute after legal shooting light.
Yeah.
Maybe 2 minutes after legal shooting light. I was like, oh my God. Like I grabbed an arrow. Like I took an arrow out of my quiver, and I was like, I put my arms open. I'm like,
yeah, what are you doing? Mm-hmm.
What are you doing? Like, you're going to shoot this animal? And then what? And then I'm going to tell all my buddies that it came in during legal light, or I'm going to tell my buddies, like, I got down early. And then every time I look at it on the wall, I'm going to feel like a complete scumbag because I took an animal's life. And so I very quickly realized as I was growing up, all these different advantages, I started backing away from them. I'm not saying that that's why I shoot a longbow right now. I shoot a longbow right now because I really like watching the arrow flight, and it's really challenging for me, and it's really kind of fun to. It's just a very rewarding process. Like last year, I had a couple of 180s walk by at like 30 yards, and I was like, "Well, that was kind of cool."
Yeah.
Like, I'm not even reaching for my bow. Like that was kind of cool. Like, like. And then, like for me, it was like, oh, he's maybe going to come by later on. And, and so anyway, but I just realized that the more like, and I'm not saying anything to you guys, so please don't. In fact, I have a property here in Wisconsin that I'm actually talking to you guys on right now. But I let my neighbor hunt it. Like I don't even hunt it. I let my neighbor hunt it, which is really funny because he came down to ask permission. He didn't know who I was. He came down to ask permission to see if he could hunt my property when I bought it. And he knocked on the door and I let him in, and I literally have, like you guys can see, like I sheep and the skins and skulls and antlers are everywhere. And so I go, hey, come on in. And he comes in, he looks around, he goes,
Never mind.
so you hunt?
Yeah.
I go, yeah, I do. And he's like, oh, never. He's basically like, never mind.
Yeah,
I go,
never mind.
No, what? He goes, I was coming down to see if I could hunt your land. I was like, I don't know, let's talk about it. And so we started talking, and then I basically was like, hey man, I'm gone most of the year. Like I'm gone a lot. Like this is a beautiful little piece of woods. It's got 3 ponds on it. I was like, why don't you hunt it? Like you hunt it, and then and so it's just kind of cool because even when I'm not hunting here, I kind of get to hunt it via his stories. But anyway, I digress. But my point is that just he uses cell cameras.
Yep.
Okay. I hate cell cameras. Like I'm pretty much against cell cameras, but all the properties I hunt with buddies, they all use cell cameras. In fact, the one property that I have in Illinois, we as a group own like 30 cell cameras, and I have a login. I can just log in. I can see all the pictures. Not once ever have I logged in. Like, it's so funny. Some of my partners would be like, "Oh my God, like there's Bill." I'm like, "Holy cow, that thing has gotten big." And I was like, "Hey, can you text it to me?" He's like, "It's on our login. Just go on there." And I'm like, "No, I'm not.
Yeah.
I don't have any interest." And I used to do that with trail cameras too. It's like I set trail cameras and I check them on Monday, and I'd be like, "Oh my God, he was here."
Yeah.
I did that when I hunted Steve. Like, "Oh my God, he was here." And then I very quickly realized, like, "Oh my God, you're a day or a week or a month behind every time."
Every time.
So now I go set all my trail cameras, and I probably set 50 trail cameras a year across the country. And I set them in bottlenecks, and I set them in extreme crossings, things like that. I don't set them like, and sometimes on scrapes, when I see a scrape, whatever, I'll keep 1 or 2 in my backpack when I'm hunting. And I just leave them for the year. And if I'm walking past one, I might switch cars out or something and just taking a look at it for entertainment. But I just leave them for the year. But then I go back and look at them later, and I really learn, okay, this is who was there. This is what they were doing. This is really cool. I see their behavior. They're juxting for position, or they're in here eating. Like I'll find a food source. Like I just found, I was on a property 2 weeks ago, and I found 2 crabapple trees that I didn't know existed. And I found some deer poop under them that was kind of wet and slimy. So I was like, oh, I wonder if they're keying in on these crab apples, which is making their stools loose, because they're just eating a little bit too much fruit. So I put a camera over it, and I'll check it next year. I'll let September and maybe October blow by before I check the camera, or maybe I'll let the whole season blow by, and then I'll check that, and I'll learn a lot about those 2 crabapple trees for next opening
For
day.
next year.
Like
Yeah.
maybe they're done eating there in September. I don't know. Maybe they visited a little bit the first week of October. I don't know, but I'll figure that out. But my point is, cell cameras, even releases and stuff, compound bows, like there's a certain level that I'm comfortable with. If I shoot fixed blade broadheads, but Jared, if you want to shoot a mechanical broadhead, I'm totally fine with that. I get it. You want to make a huge hole in this animal. I totally appreciate that. I shoot an arrow for if I make a bad shot, and all these different things. But there is a level for me personally that there's a line in the sand, and I try not to cross it, because I see my appreciation for my own time degrading once I cross that line.
Oh, yeah.
Yep, agree.
Well, check this out, dude. You might find this interesting. And since you brought him up, I'll use him as the example. Lee Lukoski, we've obviously we don't know Lee personally, but a lot of respect for,
mutual friends.
He's an awesome guy.
Yeah, for everything he's done.
Awesome
and
guy.
Yeah, we really, I think look up to a lot of what he does conservationally speaking. And like, we aspire to kill the kind of deer that guy kills. I was watching.
Yeah, he's amazing. He's amazing.
Yeah. And we know a lot of people that are close friends with Lee. And so I can speak through them that I think he's a great guy. But I heard him say something on, a video that they put out a couple weeks ago that like I was personally conflicted by, because I was like, man, while I am intrigued and like would also want to feel the way that, this statement was put out there, I also have this sense of, I think what you're saying of like wanting to self-restrict, wanting to back off. And I think like on either end of the spectrum, it's not necessarily this black and white, but on one hand you have, total element of surprise. How do I just immerse myself in a hunting experience? I'm only reading sign. I'm not using additional tools, whether it's with a traditional bow or whatever, wherever that is for you. Cell cams obviously are a huge one. The other end is extreme herd management. I'm the most effective at knowing what deer are there, what the age class is, exactly how they're moving on a pattern. Extreme herd management. And so Lee's statement was something like, not in a braggadocious way, but it's just as a matter of fact, he's like, we used to like, there would be deer on the hit list, and like, if we got one, it was really cool. And he's like, anymore, it's like, if there's a deer on our hit list, he's like, it's already dead. He's like,
really?
It's done. Yeah.
Wow.
And his attitude,
he is that good.
He's that good. Like they've got their herd
good.
that dialed in. They've got so much manipulation to their property and stuff. It's like, and whether he was exaggerating or not, I mean, didn't seem like it. He's like,
not.
Yeah, he's like, if it's on
dead.
the hit list, he's like, I'm gonna kill it. It'll be probably this day.
Wow.
Same with Mark Drury.
Yeah, Mark's the same way.
Mark?
Yeah, we know Mark.
Yeah, Mark will be like, this buck, this, he'll send me a picture. It's so funny. He always texts me. He's like, hey, don't send this out.
Yeah.
Right.
And then he'll send me like all these pictures, and then he'll be like, this buck, check this buck out. And I'll go, cool. He's like, I'm probably gonna shoot him like October 5th, maybe 6th, 7th, something like that. And then he'll text me like October 6th, like, I just shot him.
Dude, Lee's literally calling a shot. There's this deer he's chasing. Sure, he's like, it'll be October 2nd. And he's looking at the moon primarily, and he's like, it'll be October 2nd.
Here is the ultimate herd management, knowing of the property,
which is cool. It's amazing
it.
that somebody can reach that level of like, understand or control over their herd.
And they don't have intrusion, you guys.
Yeah.
They don't have intrusion.
Yeah.
So like when Lee goes in there October 2nd, it's the first time somebody's been in there.
It's fresh.
That deer has no idea. That deer's been in there October 2nd the last 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
And now today when he goes in there on October 2nd, Lee's there.
Yeah. Well, and that's the struggle, man, because like nobody, I'm sure even the three of us, like we all want a challenge. We love the challenge. That's probably why the experience, the challenge, that's one of the things we just, yearn year round. At the same time, we talk about it on public land. Like the last thing I want to do is go in public land in Ohio and for 4 days in a row, it's just guys walking in on me. It ruins my experience. No. It ruins my challenge with that deer.
Well, you want both. You want both ends of the spectrum. You want, as much surprise, as much organic experience as possible. But I also want to kill the 200-inch deer.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And so I was like, where do you draw the line in between so that I can achieve both or as close to both as possible?
I think you said it best at one point. It was the unpressured deer. Like, I want to hunt deer in their element with the best experience. And the way to do that is they need to be unpressured.
Yeah.
They need to be in their own element. That's what's so great about the Dakota.
You want to see the deer's biology.
Yes.
That's what you want. That's what you're really craving, is because if you're an articulate, in tune person, you really, this is how I feel. I don't want to project this on you guys. I really don't care about killing deer. I don't even really care about hunting deer. I'm a hunter. I want to feel their fur under my hand. I want to watch my knife glide under their skin. I want to skin them. I want to pick that quarter up and feel the crust of blood that forms on it as I'm laying it on the tarp or on the game bag or whatever. That's the aspect that I want to live. But really, I'm just there because I love the deer.
Yes.
I want to watch.
100%.
I want to watch their biology. And if I'm watching them run, if the three of us are doing a deer drive and this buck's hauling ass past me at full, like, that's not what I'm talking about. I don't
Yeah.
even want them to know I'm there. I just want to watch them fight. It's just like what we were talking about before. If I kill the right buck in the last week of October, and then I'm still going to go into my spot in November, and I'm just going to sit there and watch the show. The big difference is the photographer that's with me will probably have his bow in the tree.
Yeah.
And, I'll still have my bow in the tree for imagery or whatever, but he'll have his bow in the tree. So when this next buck comes by, I'm like, hey, like, you're up.
Right.
Yeah, that's it, man. That's the hard, and I think that's so hard for so many hunters to comprehend, because they're just like, well, but the whole point is to kill the deer, and it's like, it's not though.
Well, and it is all of it too. Like, it's not, and I know you mean this too, Donnie. It's not just the animal. Like, you seem to be more passionate, more focused on the animal itself, which I can totally appreciate. But the other elements would be the season itself, and also, some guys are really, I think Jeremy and I are, on the land itself, the landscape or whatever, whichever element of it is, or all of them together. Like you portrayed it as like an oil canvas earlier. And I even said, I think coming on to this podcast here before, dude, it starts right now. Like, for me, it's September. It's like just to step back and realize the anticipation that we all have, and like the changing of the season, what it's going to do to the animals, and what we're all going to be able to participate in, is like, how do you just slow that down and just make it last as long as possible? To your point about a high goal allows us, that's our tool to be able to make that process last as long as possible, until the season wraps up and we start it all over again.
Yeah.
Yeah, like during the rut, it always cracks us up. But the photographer that I'm working with right now, he's a really talented guy named Forrest Rowe, and he and I, people think this is, maybe they'll think it's nuts, maybe they won't, I don't know. But like during the season, every day we set our alarms for 3 a.m. That's when we get up. We get up at 3. One of us usually is like cooking pancakes or eggs or whatever it is. We eat our breakfast. We already have our gear together. We eat our breakfast. We drive out to where we're going to park. We slow walk. I wear, more often than not, there's a company out of northern Minnesota called Steger mucklucks. I wear mucklucks when I hunt. So it's a knee-high moose skin or deer skin or whatever boot. But it's basically like wearing a giant leather sock over my foot. So it's super, super quiet to walk, and they're unbelievably warm on a tree stand. Like, if you know anyone that gets cold feet when they're sitting on a tree stand like these things, they'll literally never get cold feet again.
Interesting.
And so like when you walk in, we get there early, and we walk in, and it's just silent, just putting our feet down. And we can hear deer running around. Sometimes we hear deer grunting or snort wheezing or whatever. And we just pick our way to our tree stand, and I go up first, or he goes up first, and I go up, and we get all set. And we just sit there, man. We sit there for like an hour and 20 minutes before illegal light.
Yep.
And we just sit there, sometimes even longer. Sometimes we'll laugh at ourselves because we're just efficient in the morning. We'll get there. We'll look, it's like an hour and 40 minutes before you can legally shoot. And the deer are walking by, and they're not busting you. Like, even if they get your wind, or even if they walk right underneath you, like, the pitch blackness gives you this anonymity where the deer are like, that's weird. Something's out of place, but I really don't care because it's nighttime and we rule the night. And so we'll just sit there, and then you just get to watch the forest come to life. And because we walked in an hour and a half ago, nothing's afraid.
Right.
The birds aren't reacting to us. The possums aren't reacting to us. The raccoons or the deer, nothing's reacting to us. And everything is just coming to light. So if a big buck is pushing a doe through a woodlot or squaring up to fight or whatever, like, they don't even know we're there.
Yeah, man.
Like, we get to just watch. And it's funny because our partners, or the guys that are hunting similar or same properties as us, they're like, what are you guys like? We leave the house before their alarms go off.
Right.
Yeah.
They haven't even started the process, and we're out the door.
Yeah.
And they just, every time they're like, what? And then they say, because they're always like, and these guys they're good hunters, but they just enjoy their time. But they'll be in the local cafe at 9 a.m.
Oh, sure.
They'll text us like, hey, you guys want to come have breakfast? We're like, no, we're sitting in the dark. And they always say, what do you guys do all day out there? But if they saw what we saw from 9 a.m. till, like, there's not, most days when we're in the peak of the movement, most days we couldn't even climb down before another big buck is coming. Like that's a reality of it, is that there's so much movement. If you've done your homework in scouting.
Yep.
And you guys know who Cody D'Acquisto is?
Oh yeah.
We like Cody a lot.
Mhm.
Yeah, remarkable deer hunter. He moves around a lot, and we text a lot during the season, and so he moves around a lot because, and I love how he does it. If I had, what'd you say?
I said it's funny as you're talking. We have a lot of mutual friends.
Yeah, so I'll be like, hey, like he'll text me a picture of a deer, and he's like, hey, I passed this deer this morning. What do you think? I'm like, you made a mistake. He's like, yeah, I think so too. I'm gonna go back in this afternoon and try to find him. And then he moves all around. But I'm the type, and I do sometimes move, but I'm much more the type as I try to find the X, and I just stay there all day.
That's your style.
And I like to kind of see the woodlot come to life. Whereas Cody's like, yeah, this is the X right now. But if it ceased to be the X for the next 30 minutes, dude, I'm going to the next place. Now, if I was a wealthy guy and I had 5,000 acres to hunt or something like that, I might do something like that because it would be fun. The other thing is, and he and I have talked about at great length this, we use such high-end camera equipment and lenses. We can't get away with that.
Yeah.
Because we have a big thing in the tree.
Yeah,
now, we go through, my tree stands are basically like a 20-foot tall ghillie suit. We go through great lengths to create hides where we hunt, which is why we don't get busted a lot.
Yeah.
We go through great lengths to try to make sure our wind is dumping into a river or dropping into a ravine where the deer aren't going to be. And that's why these setups are so intense that we only have a couple.
You can't replicate it all over the place.
Yeah. Can't. And so that's what Cody gets away with, is that he can go, if I was by myself and I could get 10 feet off a tree, oh my God. His process, if you're not filming, his process opens.
Yeah. That's what I was going to say. That's my style. I feel in a weird way, obviously I want to be in a tree, but during the right time of the year, if I need to get out and move, I feel just as deadly on the ground. I've killed multiple bucks from the ground. If it's time to get aggressive, I'm all in. I'll bump a deer just because I'm too aggressive, and then I'll just move to the next one.
Mm-hmm.
It's just how I am.
Me too. I could care less. The whole scent control, do this and don't step on a twig. One time I was walking with a photographer. Is the Peak Rut. We're in Missouri. I won't name names, but he was working with a guy that you guys definitely know. And this guy, every time he'd step on a twig, this dude would scream at him.
Oh.
Turn around and be like, dude.
Yeah.
What? Yeah. And so I was walking one time with this guy, and he stepped on a twig, and I heard it, and I more so turned around to make sure he didn't need my help.
Yeah.
Maybe he dropped his backpack. Maybe he dropped his camera. Maybe he just stubbed his toe. Maybe whatever. He broke a branch, and I'll never forget this. And I turn around, and he goes.
He flinches. Don't hit me.
I'm so sorry. And I go, what do you mean? He goes, the noise. I go, oh. And why I did this, I have no idea. But I go, I won't do it because poor Nick his ears will be bleeding. But I literally go, I'm holding my bow and I just go, deer, 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 as loud as I can scream. And I look back at the guy and he's looking at me with giant eyes and I go, doesn't matter. Let's go. I'll guarantee you when I was screaming, all the deer probably went
yeah.
And then as soon as I stopped yelling, they were like,
yeah, whatever.
Cool.
Yeah, back.
Who cares? If a deer ran from everything, Marjorie taught me this. If a deer ran from everything that it was afraid of, they would run 24 hours a day.
Yeah.
And I also learned this with Cody D'Acquisto, and he doesn't pay me, but his little lone wolf, whatever the hell it's called, I suck at names. His little lone wolf trail camera is so freaking.
Have they come out with those, or
I don't know. So you've bought them, or Cody's got them?
Oh yeah,
they've been out for a while.
Yeah, they're for sale.
Okay,
they've been out for a while.
Well, because they're working on
a
new one. They're working on a cell. Because Andre's been telling us for a while. He's like, well, these cell cameras, they emit some kind of
signal.
Signal.
They think they scare deer away.
So I know they've been working on that, but you're saying they've had like a regular trail camera for some time?
Yeah, they have a trail camera called the Lone Wolf. Or
okay, I think I
something
did
like
know that. We've just never used it.
They're rubber. They're rubberized, and they have a tree bark camo. And the video on them.
Undercover is what they're called.
Undercover.
Yeah.
You can select wide angle.
Yeah. Okay.
They are so awesome. They talk to your cell phone. They take such, and there's a crosshair on there to like when you're setting them up, you know exactly what it's going to capture. You know exactly what it's going to film. It's so good. But anyway, I set a bunch of those up on an unpicked bean field one time in Wisconsin. There was a lot of snow. I set them up all around this field just to see. And I watched that field. This was a really hidden spot. And every night it would get like 60 deer in it. And every night, like 10 times a night, the field would clear. Like, I'm not hunting it. I'm not there. No other human is there. But like 10 times a night, this field would clear. Like, if I were going out there, the three of us were going out there hunting, and we cleared the field, we very, very well may go, oh, there it goes. Yeah, there it is. Like, what else you guys want to do? Night's over with. But, and I've heard Andre say this, and I've never felt this way. Like, I've went in for a particular buck before, and then gotten busted by that buck. And then like, oh man, and I've left. And then I started not leaving. I started like, okay, I'll just kind of shift my approach or whatever. And I've heard Andre say before, like he's been going in for a buck and he's had that, like he's bumped that buck and he's like, that buck doesn't know my plan.
Yeah.
He doesn't know where I'm sitting. He didn't bust me in my tree. He busted me coming in. I'm a coyote. I'm the neighbor. I'm a farmer. I'm a dog. Like he's just running because that's what they do. Right. Yeah. And I have another guy who you guys will definitely know who, so I won't throw him under the bus. But I was hunting with this guy, and I won't even name the state because I don't want you guys to figure it out. But I was hunting with this guy in a particular state, and it wasn't hunting season. It was like July 10th, and I went to this farm, and I was going to put out a bunch of trophy rocks and some mineral, and like I started entering the bedding area to put up or at the edge of the bedding area to put up. And this guy is like, what are you doing? I said, I'm putting out this trophy rock. He's like, this is the bedding area. I said, I know. I'm just, basically I'm trying to create basically a Shangri-La for the deer. And he was like, no. This is the
sacred ground.
We don't go
here. Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah. And so I'm like, it's July 10th. He's like, doesn't matter. Like we push them out here. They may never come back. I'm like, they're going to be back here in 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Like they probably won't even leave.
Yeah.
Let alone like where do you think?
Dude.
I would love to know, like these guys that preach this, I would love to know where they think deer go.
Yeah.
Listen to this, dude. This is pretty interesting. So Jeremy and I do use cell cameras. We haven't got to the point where we're like, hey, we could do without them or whatever. Maybe we're working in that direction.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Okay.
We're getting better at it.
But anyways, it is really useful. And to your comment about going back and reviewing the information, here's one major advantage, take it or leave it. But like when I get a picture of a deer, in that very moment, I can look up at this guy. I mean, I'm only 2 hours away from where this camera is. I can say, okay, here's the weather. Here's what's happening now. I can literally check the wind direction at that very moment and that stuff. I have it all, okay, right now. I know he just came through and I can see exactly what's happening. Not necessarily the point that I'm trying to make, but one thing.
Yeah, I know what you mean. It's that one little piece of data. It's the same piece of data that I'm telling you about. It's just you're getting it real time. I get it in January.
Yeah. And it's this and it's that. But to your point about booger in a bedding area or whatever, that was me. Maybe not that long ago, a couple of years ago. I was like, we don't even look at the bedding area. Don't even walk up or don't drive the road next to it. Type of video. Yeah. And I realized over time that that was silly. So I've gotten much more aggressive when we go in. And one thing that I have found interesting, we haven't talked about this a whole lot, is more times than not, when I push into an area where I'm like, I'm probably going to bump this buck. I know he's like in here. I don't necessarily see him, but I'll get that camera set and then I'll leave. And that night, right away, he'll come back.
He'll come in.
And then there he'll be, and I'll know he never left that bedding. Sometimes it's even before dark.
Yeah.
It's like he knew I was there. He hunkered down.
He wanted to come check it out.
He came to see what was going on. And I may not get another picture of that. Like the only reason he came to that spot was because I was there and he was curious.
Yeah. And I have buddies of mine. Andre tells a story. I don't know if you guys know this, where he was hunting this giant deer that was bedding up against a dog kennel. Has he ever told you that?
Is this the one that was like, what do you say, was roaring at him from the ridge or something?
Maybe, potentially, but it's like he's like literally these
Or
dogs
barking
want
at
to
him?
kill this buck, but this is where this buck would bed. And then I have buddies of mine in southern Minnesota that own a very large motocross track,
Okay.
and they're not hunters at all. And both these guys are professional motocross racers.
Who are they?
And Jeremy Martin and Alex Martin.
Yeah, okay. I don't know them personally, but I used to race
Yep.
motocross growing up. So.
Okay, right on. Same. I raced for years on
Word.
the East Coast, but these guys will tell me like a giant buck will bed next to their track. I mean, like to where literally they've told me like they're going around the track and the dirt from their bike is landing on the back of this deer, and he is literally. They said they'll just be ripping past him, and he won't even look at him. Like his back, the track is his safe zone.
Wow.
Yeah.
Right? He knows a
there's no
coyote's not
danger
coming from
there.
the racetrack.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and so like, and that's all these guys. I'm not telling you need to go run around your property, but I leased a property here in Wisconsin for years. I lost it last year, but the property owner, when I was leasing it from him, he's like, hey, like 4 times a year, he had 2 daughters. He's like, 4 times a year, I like to like walk around the field with my daughters. I was like, okay.
Cool.
He's like, is that cool? And I go, yeah, totally. And he's like, well, the guy that leased it previously told me like, absolutely not, no access. Like you can't use your property at all. And I was like, okay, well, that's really dumb because like, unless I'm out here.
Yeah.
And even if I am out here, if I'm out here and you're literally like, hey, I'm going to go for a walk. Yeah. Okay, great. I just don't get hung up on that stuff anymore. And yeah, I just want to be in the woods. I want to do my homework on the front end. I want my wind to be dumping off if I can. We all know that sometimes we have to take major risks. But I want my scent dumping off into some place. I want to actually drag branches up into the tree because I want to create as much cover around me as possible. And I just want to sit and watch the show. And if I'm lucky enough to get a shot at a mature deer that's close, or even a young deer that's close, if I happen to want to kill a young buck or whatever, and which it doesn't happen. I say that, but it doesn't happen. I'd much rather shoot a doe. Sure. But if I whatever it is, if I get a shot, or sometimes, especially with my longbow, one of the things that I've noticed that I do sometimes when I'm hunting is I'll shoot at squirrels. And last year I shot at a squirrel and missed it, and my arrow sticking in the ground. And then I had a really big buck, come up, and my arrow sticking in the ground. And this isn't a deer that we want to shoot because he's young. He's 4 years old, but he's freaking mega. And he came up and literally sat there for 15 minutes and licked my arrow.
Yeah. You should
lick the fletchings, lick the knock, and lick the whole shaft, lick the whole thing for 15 minutes.
You shoot squirrels with your broadheads?
Yeah.
You do? So here's my...
Yeah, I should probably get some judo points, but I do. Yeah.
Well, here's my thought, because I like shooting squirrels too, but I don't want to whatever it is, whether it actually is or not, I don't want to screw things up. So I'm like, I have a rule for myself. So like I obviously have I have like a mechanical broadhead that I hunt with while I'm deer hunting. And if I see a squirrel that I want to shoot that's like strikes my fancy or whatever, my rule is that I have to take that arrow off and put it in my quiver. And I always have a field point arrow with me. Mm-hmm. And so that's 9 times out of 10, by the time I get it switched over, the opportunity is lost, and it's a good thing, because I'm like, okay, it's good. Mm-hmm. He got away, so now I'll move back.
Yeah, and I shoot arrows every single day from the tree stand, not when I get there.
When you get down.
But when I'm getting into, because of filming light, because of the cameras that we use, like the last 10 minutes, 15 minutes, we really can't get the imagery that we need for our work. We really can't get it. So I'll shoot my arrows then, but I'll just pick out like an Osage orange that's like 25 yards, or a leaf, and I always shoot my arrows back to where we have to leave. I'm not shooting into my hunting area
to where
I'll
you're going.
I'll turn around in my tree stand. Yeah, I'll shoot. We'll pick funny things out and try to like get down on a knee and shoot those things. But I like to shoot 3 or 4 arrows before I leave the tree stand, just because it re-solidifies. And then the place that we stay when I am hunting in Illinois, I also have an antelope target set up in our great room. And I'll literally shoot like across the living room while everyone's watching TV or cooking dinner or whatever. So like, yeah.
Very
I do
cool.
that too. I have that Reinhardt target set up in my office. So usually when I'm working, like during the day, I'll just turn around and shoot 10 arrows
couple.
in my office,
Yeah.
5 yards.
Yeah.
It's nice.
It's really important, but yeah, that's cool. That's cool.
Well, dude, we stole your morning from you, but man, we really appreciate you coming on and talking with us. It's Jared and I. Really, the point of this podcast for us was just to find people that share the passion like we do. Like, it's, you know, they're out there, right? Obviously, you're one of them, but it just seems like, you know, sometimes with today's society, it's not as easy to connect.
Well, I was really excited for this one just because I know from your films, like, you know, you do an excellent job of getting across the passion that you have, like for all the things that we've talked about, just, the, you know, the essence of the season, right? And of the harvest and all those things that like we whatever it is, we memorialize, we
fully embody it.
Yeah, just embrace, we're chasing after, like, and so I was super excited to be like, man, we're just going to experience that, like, with Donnie. So I think we definitely did today.
Yeah, if anything, we come away from this as there's going to be a Rivers Divide 2, and we're all kind of on edge of when it's going to come out.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of gnarly that we've waited this long, but I appreciate that, you guys. And for me, I'm just trying to slow the season down. Like I used to stack my hunts, and I would, you know, like, and I remember used to telling people, and I'm not getting down on you guys. I love the fact that you guys are hunting multiple states. I think that's fantastic. And something that I'll get to in the future. But I used to just go state to state to state, and I was always in a rush, and I always was hating what I was doing, to where now I'm slowing things down, and I'm just trying to slow the season down as much as possible, whether I'm goose hunting or duck hunting or deer hunting or hunting caribou. Like, I just want to slow things down and experience them as much as possible. And you know, the hunting season, or the hunting industry, and people in general, it's not the hunting industry. We always say the hunting industry. It's people in general. Everyone wants a shortcut to fame and fortune.
Yep.
Everyone wants a shortcut to get their dream job. Everyone wants to get a shortcut.
Shoot the biggest buck possible.
Yeah. And I really think if people understood mindfulness, which is not just a fancy term or a hot term right now, people really understood presence. They really understood this idea of entropy, this continued state of disorder. Like, we're dying right now. We're not living. People have to tell you you're living. You're not. You're dying right now. Your cells are going through a cellular state of decay right now. The table I'm sitting at is rotting. Your car is rusting. All of this stuff is going through decay right now. So the quicker we're able to take a small half step backwards, it's impossible to live your life as though you're dying. It's impossible. People say that, like, hey, it's impossible to do that. Every one of us has responsibilities. If the four of us knew that we had terminal illness, or knew that we had 24 hours to live or whatever, we wouldn't be on this podcast. There's no way we'd be doing any of this. We would be spending time with really, really close friends and family. And so it's impossible to live your life in that manner, but you can come damn close to that. And you can really be honest with yourself, be honest with your wives, your girlfriends, your sons and daughters, your parents, your friends, and really start to focus in on the things that you want to do and how you want to spend your days and the way in which you want to do this. And I think in slowing this process down and really understanding that you don't have to do things in life that you necessarily don't want to do, or you don't have to necessarily do them because this is how society says you're going to do them. You really can take a step back and harness this time. People always like to talk about our life expectancies. You know, men are living to 74, women to 76, or whatever it is now. And really, that's a fallacy, because most of the people are just being kept alive. It's not that we're living longer as human beings. Like, you'll hear Joe Rogan will say, you know, this is the longest we've ever lived. We're living longer than we ever have. The medical care is the best it's ever been. Well, I would argue he's absolutely correct, but I would also argue that, like, in experiencing what we experienced last year with COVID, that I would say that medical care has never been a bigger business and a bigger farce than it's ever been in this last couple of years. And we're really, what we're doing is we're dying slower. That's all we're doing. Yeah. We are so worried about dying. We are so worried about, we don't take care of ourselves. We're not pushing weights. We're not eating correctly. We're not challenging ourselves in the wilderness and really living our lives to the fullest. we're trying to minimize our peaks and valleys, and we are sneaking bad food to kind of give ourselves little wins and little rewards all the time, because real life, real hardship is too hard to embody. And so we just kind of have this slow poison degradation of health. We don't feel like warriors at all, and we don't feel like men, we don't feel like women, we don't feel like contributors, we don't feel like hunters. And I just think if people really start to look at what they eat, how they move their bodies, what they think about, really, what does your next deer hunt mean? Not 200 inches, not 6.5-year-old, not those steaks on the grill, but really, what are you going to embody today when the sun comes up, and the animals that you're going to see, the birds you're going to see, the tree species that you're going to be in, the little tiny things. If you look at all these little details, the closer you come to something, the more interested it becomes to you and to the people around you. If you really start to embody that time, I really think your experience, no matter what the outcome, is going to become elevated.
Mm-hmm.
So I appreciate being asked to be on here with you guys. It's very flattering. It's weird to me to have a career to do this type of stuff, but it's really flattering to be asked to be on your podcast. And I very much appreciate the time. You didn't waste my morning. I think we had a great conversation, and I feel, my day's going to be better for it.
Well said, man. We appreciate it as well. I mean, dude, one thing we can all just count our blessings for, that we're super fortunate for, but also I would say, all three of us probably have fought tooth and nail for, because we all have, like you said, responsibilities. We have spouses or, kids or, jobs to maintain, things that need, that we have to perform for so that other people can benefit and stuff but through all of that, we've prioritized or realized that this hunting season, this hunting experience is like one of the most important things, in our lives, for us to continue living, experience actual, whatever I'm trying to say there. And so we have worked so hard throughout our lives, and especially during what you would call the off season or whatever, so that when the time comes for us, and I would allude to, there was a time where, dude, and it's not just you, but it was you and I, when we were working so hard to build a business or fulfill these obligations, that it's man, October just slipped by, and it's we did fast. It's we didn't even hunt. And then you look back on that, and you're like, how did I go in October without hunting? How is it possible that I allowed for that to happen? And sometimes it does have to happen. I mean, responsibilities, they do need to be there. But
there was a time I took pride in not hunting until October 23rd and killing my buck that first, hanging hunt. And it was man, that was super successful. And maybe it's the older I get, but it's all the time I missed. And what was really important was just being in the woods, sitting those mornings before daylight. I felt like my hearing was at 6 levels above what it was. I'm listening to this crack over here, or a little bit of, was that a grunt here? And those are the things that, I was focused on the end goal, which was, tag the buck. And I sat out on the bench for weeks waiting for the opportunity, where really it was the experience that would have, filled my cup essentially.
Yeah. 100%.
That's it, man.
100%.
Well, we appreciate it, Donnie. Thanks so much for coming on, and look forward to what you and Sick Man are going to be putting out here over, the next few months and years, and keep us updated, obviously, on your kind of adventures this year for sure.
Absolutely. Thanks, boys. And you too. Let me know how you guys do in North Dakota, and I'm really curious of the kinds of animals and things that you'll see.
We'll keep you posted, man, for sure.
Okay, cool. Very cool.
All right, dude.
And awesome.
Very cool.
Yeah, it's we were just kind of talking offline. Obviously,
what a mysterious figure, Donnie Vincent.
Well, it's so funny because I don't know. Obviously, I know Donnie from
in the best way possible.
From Rivers Divide. If you haven't watched Rivers Divide and you're a whitetail guy, watch it. It's awesome. Yes, you're gonna have to pay for it. Precursor there. It's well worth it. You're gonna watch it multiple times a year because it's just a good story. The scenery, the deer interactions you have, everything about it is just, it's a cool thing to experience. But other than that, I would say up until maybe a year or two ago, I didn't really know much about Donnie. And then all of a sudden it was he was on the cover of Men's Health or something too.
I think so.
And obviously he's been on Rogan, and there's all these things, and it's just who is Donnie Vincent? Mm-hmm. Donnie. Who is Donnie?
Donnie.
Well, he's done a lot of different stuff, I think. Even, early in our conversation, we were trying to, kind of pinpoint. And it's it doesn't sound like there's any one species or any one, like he's just very much a lover of like the process of all of it. And I think the filming is probably a major
the
part.
photography and filming side, obviously the Sick Mana stuff. And I guess I didn't realize that Sick Mana did that much stuff.
That's his main. Yeah, that's Donnie's business is content.
Well, and I
business
knew that obviously from like him doing his feature films.
Yeah, right.
But I didn't know that they did that much business in the industry until all of a sudden I was looking at Sick Mana's profile. I saw the shields and the True Velocity stuff. And when you see the quality of the work, you're like, oh, that makes
top
sense.
tier, yeah.
Yeah, it makes sense. So, but yeah, it's kind of I don't know, knowing that stuff. And then what's cool about that is hearing like he's got all of this feature film potential. Like it's already in the can, ready to go. And I guess I just didn't anticipate that from him. Like having that film that just hadn't been released, edited and released.
Oh yeah. I mean, I'm sure, anybody that's like in his position that spends so much time in the field filming, it's like you're going to have stories that are untold, and that's good. They sit there until the time's right. And
yeah, I think the interesting thing with him, and we're seeing this with certain people, Warb in the hunting public to a point, Bomar being one, DeQuisto being another, is like these guys are very much admired in the industry. They do great content, great work, very entertaining, and they're pulling away from the mainstream industry, right? Like Donnie doesn't have, I mean, I'm sure he has some partners, but he's not like, oh, I'm sponsored by X and X and X and X. Like,
well, I think it's in all aspects too. Like you hear it a lot with, the cell cameras or even, weapon of choice or whatever. Like Donnie's maybe on an extreme example, but there is kind of a general consensus against or across, I think, the industry, or guys that are super passionate about this, is that we've maybe in some ways gone too far. Like we've stepped the bounds. Certainly on the industry aspect. I mean, there was quite a distaste for like the way partnerships were done for a while, but also with hunting itself, in
terms of the technologies and the weapons and the liberalizations we talked about.
So I think there's a healthy like questioning happening right now. And it's in the face of people we're losing hunters at a rapid rate, but whatever, I think it's healthy to like assess for ourselves, like why we're doing this. What is the real objective of hunting, and how do we want to, how do we want to move forward?
I think that's where we connected with Donnie on this thing, is that we're spiraling around this experience. Like then if, this is coming out September 5th, the next 4 months, for sure, we want to see success, but the experience of the next 4 months is what we live for.
That's it, man. And I think the longer we do it, the more that we embrace it. Like the success is being able to experience it as completely and for as long a time as possible.
Yeah, and selfishly, that's one of the coolest things about this podcast for you and I, is those experiences come back and we're able to share it with anybody listening or watching this thing.
Yeah.
And not all of them are going to be success stories. It could be this happened or we did this or we saw this. But it's that experience that gets us through. I thought his last kind of closing statement there, at least to me, and I'm getting older than you guys, obviously, but that time standpoint is
that you're dying.
Well, yeah. Every day I'm dying, but it's that slowdown of time. We've talked about it before, and it's like you can't do it. Like there are definitely days, and it's it's even with my kids getting older and stuff. Like I feel like I've got both feet in the dirt, and I'm just getting pushed forward. Yeah, I can't stop it. I can't slow it down. And so when you get to these seasons that are 3-4 months, in some cases it's like October 1 to November 15th for archery, really, and that's it for us. It's like, how do you slow down that 6 weeks to not feel like, damn it, like another one just slipped by me? Because there aren't that many in a lifetime,
Yeah.
And to his point, yeah, maybe we are living to 74, but whatever it is, put a point on it, 60, 65. At some point, you are not as efficient as a functioning hunter as you used to be, right? The seasons start to slip away from you, and your ability to hunt like you want to hunt aren't going to be there. And so it's like, how do you put your feet in the ground to slow it enough to where you really enjoy that October 1st to November 15th? And you feel like when you get past that, you're never going to feel like, perfectly satisfied. But you get to Thanksgiving and you're like, man, it's been a great year. I love that. Versus reflecting back and saying, ugh, I wish, right? Because that's the regret that nobody wants to live with.
Well, I think, I think it's easy to want to fast forward through, like, I don't know, quote unquote, the bad stuff or stuff.
We talk about it all the time. Like, it's summer. I wish we could just fast forward to October.
I know. And I think, like, in the same vein of, slowing it down, people want to think that, well, yeah, obviously the good stuff we want to slow down, the bad stuff we want to speed through.
Mm-hmm.
But I think in reality, like, you're better off to embrace all of it, wholeheartedly. Like, bad things will come or whatever it is that's, deducting or, you want to obviously try to minimize those and improve as time goes along. But the realization that it really is, the struggle and, like, it's the wait for a season to come. It's the bad things that happen leading up to or going through it. That make the experience so complete. Like, if your whole ride through the hunting season is highs, can they really be that high?
No.
I would contest that they can't, without the lows,
They can't.
And so it's the highs and the lows that make the experience complete.
Mm-hmm.
So embrace all of it.
Yeah. Well, I think that's well said. And obviously, September 5th, it's time.
By the time you're listening to this, I'll be on a plane coming back from North Dakota. You will have had opening weekend with the kids in Kentucky.
Yeah, unless something shows up and Dad decides to come. Or I kill it with my recurve.
Yeah.
I don't know.
How do you feel? Do you have cameras? I mean, you're not talking a whole lot about what's
secretive, Nick.
Ooh.
No, most of
cameras are dead, or
yeah, I've got cameras dead. No, I mean, I've got a lot.
Do you think you've got some deer to hunt on opening day, or?
Yeah, I've got one for sure, maybe
that
two.
8 point. That's Kentucky. That's behind the cabin, though, right?
Yeah, the one behind the cabin's a 5-year-old. There should be a really, really nice buck back there with him, and I haven't seen him yet. But I also don't have, like, for better or worse, I haven't done any feeding or, I guess it's not baiting because we're not hunting. I haven't done any feeding, like, on any of my properties. I've planted food. So that's probably, like, I just have some mineral out. So typically by now, like, I've had feeders or corn piles running, and, like, I'm inventorying deer. I really haven't had a chance to do that. I've just been busy. So I've got at least one in Kentucky, possibly, if I'm shooting my recurve, that really tall 9 point's probably getting smacked. He's not making it by me. I'd love to see him make it another year. I'm not going to tell the kids not to shoot him either, or Emily.
That's
but
5-year-old 9 you're talking
that's
about?
that 4-year-old 9. I think he's 4.
Okay.
A real tall one. We went back and we're like, yeah, he had to be 3 last year.
Okay.
And then in Ohio, it's kind of wild. I'm not going to share all the details yet because as part of this podcast, it probably hasn't worked out. But I'm making some moves to expand the property in Ohio right now to add on to it. And I've got timbering happening probably at the same time. So Ohio's kind of up in the air a little bit in terms of what I have. I know I've showed you that one, but I got one really good, like, super wide, probably mid 140s 8. That's a tank. I'm sure there's other big deer in there. Again, that place, I'm not running bait, and I have like one camera active right now. I just haven't been down there.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm kind of coming to it a little bit blind. But I know what deer made it through, and so I'm pretty confident that they'll show, or I'll be able to get on them here at some point. But I'm highly anticipating it, whether I start the season with it or I get into October. I'm going to be using my recurve at least 50% of the time this year.
Wow.
That's my plan, at least. I feel like I need to root myself back a little bit. And maybe it's because of the technologies and stuff that I've really been diving into the last few years that I think I stepped over the line. And maybe I'm taking too big of a jump back by going to a recurve or something, but something about that traditional challenge, and kind of, I did it late season a couple times, and I felt better about my being in the stand. Like, even if I wasn't going to shoot one, just the experience of with a recurve and, like, challenge of being out there, like, I felt like I was hunting again.
Yeah.
And that may sound weird to some people because we talk about, food plots and cameras and everything we do, but there's definitely an aspect that over the last couple of years, I think personally I've missed, which is the actual hunt and pursuit. And that's what I love so much about it.
I think it's easy to take yourself too seriously, maybe during the hunting season. Like, I'm definitely guilty of it. Just taking everything that you've done, all of your hunting in general, taking it too seriously. I think it's, it is, there's time to be serious, and it's, I mean, you're taking an animal's life ultimately, so it should be taken seriously. Sure. But what I mean is more like, I think there's a lot of enjoyment, like you're saying, out of stepping back, not taking yourself or your approach toward deer hunting so seriously, and trying to just focus more on enjoying it and having fun while you're doing it.
I think I'll hunt more this year. We've talked about it, but the last few years I've hunted very much based on the information from my cameras. And maybe subliminally, that's one reason I don't have cameras running as aggressively right now as I normally would, is that kept me out of the woods more than it kept me in the woods. Mm-hmm. And so I think I missed that. And so this year I'm going to run cell cams and I'm going to have real-time data, but I'm not, when I have the chance to go hunt or the conditions are right, I'm going to go hunt. I'm not going to let it keep me out.
I would venture to say, and I'm hopeful that like our, when it comes to killing deer, like I think our success this year is going to be higher because of that.
Take that to the bank, Nick.
October 2nd. No, I'm just kidding. That was me calling my shot. Isn't that crazy? What I was saying?
I haven't seen. I'll have to watch it for later. We're gonna get Lee. We gotta get Lee on. First
for sure. It was really interesting, like how I just my perception about how I thought about that, like the statement. He's like, if it's on the hit list, like it's done. Wow, that's done.
Yeah, and
I
don't know.
He said it not in arrogance, but in confidence.
I know. And
he's sincere.
And he's so good about it. I don't know. That's the point where I would figure out how to put myself back at a disadvantage, because when I'm that efficient at it, I don't know if I'd enjoy it as much.
Well, yeah, what guaranteed thing is any fun or worthwhile?
That's what we've been talking about with this whole opportunity and liberalization, is that the closer it gets to being guaranteed, the less passionate I think you can become about it.
And
not as a knock or pin on Lee,
obviously, and we haven't had him on to speak his piece up, but I mean he's a super smart guy. I'm sure he's actively
same with Mark. We've had Mark Archery on.
We're talking about.
Yeah, it's just how do you what's going to drive
Where do
you
you
to
go
the
from
next
there?
level?
That's the ultimate.
If you've achieved perfection,
surgical, just execution. Like it's gonna happen.
To your point, where's the bad? That's all good.
Right.
Like it's flatlined. Like you've plateaued.
Yeah.
At some point, you have to set yourself back.
There's just there's nowhere else to go. There's no higher. You can compare it back to like your Dakota conversation about chasing your 200, chasing score type of deal. Like there's these different legs or avenues that you can go down. And you can reach a point where it's like it will happen. It's like your just execution is so good at it, and you have to go back and reinvent yourself almost, or find a new avenue, or just get back to the root.
Well, I think that's where it comes back to, and part of my recurve, chasing the experience. Mm-hmm. I'm now chasing yes, I'm still trying to kill a giant buck and a mature buck, but I'm doing it by chasing the experience.
Yeah. And you can do it. It's not like you have to change something drastically. You don't have to go to a new piece of property. I think just changing your mindset, and then going back into the same piece of woods or same, whatever it is. Maybe you do remove some things here or whatever. Yeah. But I think mindset going into a season, or can change throughout the season, probably has everything to do with it.
We're in it now.
Here we go.
All right. Awesome conversation with Donnie Vincent. Appreciate Donnie coming on. Donnie. And episode 143, right, Nick? Mm-hmm. Not too far from 150. Crazy to think.
Getting there.
Crazy to think. So anyways, we appreciate everybody listening, the support. Like Nick said, fact that we're growing our numbers like we are on YouTube and
thank you guys for
TikTok
listening.
and Instagram.
Sincerely. We appreciate the following.
Super appreciative of everyone and the comments. Obviously, Jared and I try to dive into some of those as much as we can, but frankly, we're just busy. And honestly, you guys overwhelm us sometimes with comments, and it's like, I don't even know what to
continue to write in. We appreciate it, and we do pay attention to them.
If we don't actually respond to it, we are seeing them. We do appreciate the engagement, and we will see y'all next week.
Later.
Take me on down the